Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
All right, guys, we are back in court. We've got the medical examiner today, Dr. Scordi-Bello. And I'm just going to get this banner ready here for her. And they're going to be finishing up direct and then starting cross-examination here. So let's see what we will learn today. There was some very interesting testimony that came out yesterday, as I'm sure you all are well aware. So let me just get her banner ready. Chief, hope you all are having a wonderful day. Okay, Julio. Well, she's not on the witness stand yet, but she will be in just a moment. So let's go ahead and get this party started. Get this trial started. Cool.
You solemnly swear the evidence of the court and jury in the case now the answer to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Your glasses look like they have.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
Morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Dr. Scordi-Bello, if I could ask you some questions, just turning back a little bit from what you were testifying to about yesterday. You had mentioned in your testimony yesterday that you had received some, in addition to the internal and external examination that you conducted with Mr. O'Keefe, you had received some other material that you had reviewed, correct?
Correct.
Now, included within that material was some material from the state police as far as the investigative agency investigating Mr. O'Keefe's death.
Correct.
Now, is that something, is that typical? Is that abnormal? If you could describe sort of in general terms, as far as what, if any, communication would you typically have with the investigating body or agency in relation to any sort of autopsy or examination you do?
Yes.
All right.
In Massachusetts, under Massachusetts law, the medical examiner's office is responsible, and our role is to determine the cause and manner of death by doing an autopsy. The scene or the scene of death or the place where the decedent is found is controlled by the district attorney's office, and state police will do an investigation. When we accept a case into our office, we request reports, police reports, to explain and describe the circumstances of the death. It could be a house, it could be somewhere else, it could be outside. Every case comes with a police report, and we review that police report, and if we feel that we need more information, then we contact the investigating body and ask for more information, again, depending on the case.
And specifically in this case, in regard to Mr. O'Keefe, did you reach out to get some more information?
I did reach out, yes.
Was that in part in relation to what you were talking about in your testimony yesterday, as far as the diagnosis of hypothermia and trying to sort of better understand the circumstances?
Sustained.
Why did you reach out?
I reached out because when the case was presented to us, and after I did the autopsy, I did not have all the information that I needed in order to certify the manner. The cause of death to me was, I was able to determine the cause of death from the autopsy. When an event is unwitnessed, we usually reach out to the investigating agency and ask them whether they have any more information than they did on the day that the autopsy was done, because investigations sometimes take some time. So in the days and the weeks following the autopsy, I reached out and asked if there was any more information than what I was originally presented with. Was there any video from the surrounding areas? Did anybody come forward to say that they actually witnessed whatever happened? Again, by the time I was ready to finalize the case, and we have Approximately 3 months or 90 days from the day of the autopsy until we issue a report. I was not provided with enough information for me to be able to determine the manner.
Now, doctor, do you recall specifically who it was that you spoke with from the state police?
Yes, I documented that I spoke with Trooper Proctor, I believe, twice.
And with reference, not asking you anything as far as what that conversation consisted of, but as far as the tone of that conversation, did you feel pressured or coerced to come up with a certain determination?
No, I did not.
And even if you had been, what would your response have been in reference to that?
My response was that I am responsible for what goes on the death certificate, and unless I have enough information, clear and convincing evidence, I cannot determine a manner.
May I approach?
Yes. Approach. All right. We will skip ahead, or we'll speed him up a little bit as he's lollygaggling here, as per usual.
I'm showing you 5 photographs that I.
All right, so here come the autopsy pictures. Good morning, Candace. Happy to see you, my friend. Anyone who missed
Yes,
it,
I do.
we have a new emoji in the distance.
I recognize these as
Lally.
photographs of Mr. Keefe's body.
Feel free to go check
I
it
believe
out.
these were taken at the hospital. One of them is a photograph taken at the time of autopsy.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm going to seek to introduce in the minutes the next witness.
Ms. Little?
No objection. So Miss Little will be doing cross.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, may I have a moment? I just want to make sure they're in the
Yes.
correct order.
Oh, Lolly. Lollygaggling along.
May I approach again?
Yes.
Your Honor, information may have adjourned.
So jurors, remember the instruction I gave you yesterday on these photographs. Okay.
Just going to have photographs.
All righty.
Doctor, do you recognize what's up on the screen?
Yes, this is a picture taken of Mr. Keefe's body.
And doctor, if you could, using the laser pointer, that you have there, direct jury's attention to what, if anything, you observe of significance in this photograph related to the injuries that you were testifying about.
Yes. So first thing you notice is the medical intervention, which I talked about yesterday. There's defibrillator adhesive pads on the chest. There is what's known as a C collar, a cervical stabilization collar for the neck, and he has been intubated prior to going to the hospital. The injuries that are obvious in this picture include the abrasions on his right forearm and arm. And you can see here, there is this coloration of the upper eyelid of the right eye with some blood that's dripping. That's the orbital or supraorbital ecchymosis that I described before with, we're too far to see the very, very small laceration that is present there, but that's what's causing the bleeding.
And it's going to invite that photograph to page 57. Now, doctor, this is not before you at the current time of Carly Mark as exhibit 442. Do you recognize what's up on the screen?
Yes, this is a picture of the abrasions that I described in my report, posterior upper arm and forearm. You can see that they have some sort of pattern to it. Anytime we see a pattern, we try to document it as best as we possibly can.
Now, doctor, with reference to these injuries as far as the abrasions to Mr. O'Keefe's right arm, what kind of role that play as far as your
The arm.
as far as cause of death of Mr. O'Keefe?
These are superficial abrasions to the skin. They are not lethal. They're not contributory to the cause of death. The trauma that I observed on the head along with the hypothermia are the two factors contributing to his death. These are present, they're noted, they're described, they're photographed, but I do not know how they came to be, and I did not contribute them to the cause of death.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 286. Doctor, returning to the exhibits of the photos that you have before you, do you recognize yourself on the screen here?
Yes, this is a photograph of Mr. O'Keefe's right hand. This is the dorsum or the dorsal aspect of the hand as opposed to the palm. And you can see that there are some contusions or bruises.
Interesting.
There's a larger one here and two very small ones here. This particular contusion has two pinpoint small defects associated with it. I believe this could be due to attempts at gaining IV access during the many attempts of resuscitation, but I cannot be absolutely sure.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 2865. And Dr. Scordi-Bello, if you could, again, using the laser pointed director's attention to what, if anything, of significance you note in this photograph.
Again, this is a slightly closer view of Mr. O'Keefe's face. You can see the discoloration, the ecchymosis on the right eye with a slight amount of bleeding. You can see here that there's also some discoloration of his left eyelid.
And doctor, with reference to the other injuries that you were testifying about yesterday, as far as the small cuts or abrasions or lacerations, are those visible in this photograph as well?
I can't hear your question. If you could just repeat it and a little louder.
Sure. My apologies, doctor. With reference to this photograph, as far as your testimony yesterday in regard to the other smaller injuries around the nose and eyes area of Mr. O'Keefe, are those visible in this photograph as well?
You can see some discoloration of the nose, but this is not a very good picture of it. I think there's a linear abrasion on the left side of the nose that I described, and it's probably this.
Ms. Gilman, did I photograph 2877? Doctor, if you could, again, using the laser point direct your attention to what, if anything, is significant you observed in this one.
Yes, this is a view of the left side of Mr. O'Keefe's face. You can see the discoloration of the left eyelid, and now you can see this linear abrasion on his nose and a small abrasion more towards the middle of his nose.
Ms. Gilman, lastly, from this set, if I could have photograph 9488. Same, Dr. Scordi-Bello, if you could, using the laser point direct your attention to what, if anything, is significant you observed.
This is the laceration to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head. You can see this defect here. It's ragged. It's a typical classic blunt impact injury, and you can see the abrasion, the scrape that is adjacent to it.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm just going to take that. We get out the lights. Thanks. Now, Doctor, with reference to what you were testifying yesterday as far as the subscapular bleeding under the scalp, was that more or less prominent on one side versus the other side of Mr. O'Keefe's scalp?
Yes, it was more prominent under that laceration that we just looked at.
And so would that be more prominent on the right side? Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you testified yesterday about a blunt objects injury in relation to the injury to the back of the head, then leading to the fractures and bleeding in the brain, correct?
Correct.
Blunt object.
And further leading to the ecchymosis, is that correct?
In the eyes, yes.
Now, that blunt object, what, if anything, can you say about what that blunt object could be?
Could be any blunt object.
Well, not any
Your
blunt
training
object,
experience,
right?
With reference to
Surely.
the number of autopsies and examinations that you've conducted over the years, would that blunt object's possibility include the ground, especially if it was frozen ground?
Ask the question differently.
The injuries that you observed to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head, skull fracture, would that be consistent with a fall to the ground?
It could be.
Would that be consistent with being projected by an object, say in a pedestrian collision, and then striking your head on the ground?
It's possible.
That's not going to get you there, though, to a conviction.
The arm injuries that you observed, would those be consistent with scratches from either glass or a piece of plastic or a piece of metal?
It's possible.
And the injuries that you observed, would that be consistent with injuries that you observed in other cases of a pedestrian collision?
Yeah.
They're not the classic pedestrian injuries that we observe. No.
Ah, that's a good answer
That
for the
one, as far
defense
as
there.
when you say classic, as far as a pedestrian collision is concerned,
Hmm.
you've conducted autopsies on a number of different pedestrian collisions.
I think obviously we all know
Yes, I
that,
have.
but it
Do
is
they
good
all sort
to
of mirror
hear
each other? Is
directly
there,
from
sort
her.
of, a disparity depending on how the person interacted with the car?
Projection. Sustained. Watch the form, Mr. Lally.
What, if anything, are every injuries from a pedestrian collision the same?
No.
And why not?
It depends on many factors. It depends on the position of the body, of the pedestrian or the person being struck. It depends on whether they are moving or standing still. It depends on the speed of the car. It depends on whether brakes were applied or not. There's a lot of factors that come into play.
Would another factor be sort of the shape of the vehicle that strikes a pedestrian?
That's also possible. Yes, that's a factor.
And did you have occasion to see any photographs, or have you seen any photographs in relation to the defendant's vehicle in this case?
I have seen photographs, yes.
And the size or shape of that vehicle, what, if any, significance did that have to you as far as your examining?
Projection. I'll allow it.
When we have a potential vehicle, clearly we look at the height, because one of the things that we do in most or all pedestrian or people struck by a motor vehicle is look at the legs, because in the majority we see injuries to the legs from the bumper of the car. Again, depending on the kind of car, the size of the car, and the height of the bumper. So in Mr. Keefe, I did not see any injuries in the lower extremities. And looking at the car, I did note that it was a much bigger car with much higher.
Well, okay. Yeah.
I would say much higher tail light bumper. It was not a sedan or a car that's low to the ground where the bumper would be at the level of, let's say, the knee or slightly above or slightly below.
All right. So we know Miss Little's doing cross. If I were doing cross on this witness, one question I would ask her, well, I guess it's a series of questions technically, but I would ask her, so you've done, hundreds or thousands of autopsies, right, on pedestrians who were, killed in a motor vehicle accident, correct? And then if you had to estimate how many of those were, was the vehicle in question an SUV or a larger vehicle with a tail light that was higher up than a sedan? And then she would say whatever, and then ask, and what did those injuries look like? What, because I guarantee you there would still be injuries below the neck, right? In other words, it's like she's sort of couching that by saying, well, the injuries where they would be if that I didn't see the injuries because, she's almost like saying I didn't see those injuries that we would normally expect because it was a larger vehicle, right? But like my point is, surely she's done autopsies on individuals who were hit by a vehicle and the vehicle was larger, right? I mean, there's a lot of SUVs here in the US. So that's something I would, cross her on for sure.
And again, I believe yesterday in your testimony, you indicated that the skull is a pretty thick bone. Is that correct?
Yes.
Sustained.
With regards to the thickness of the skull bone, what, if any, significance, or what, if any, what, if anything, you say as far as the type or amount of force that would be necessary to cause the fracture that you observed?
Projection. Overruled.
I would consider the amount of force to be significant, again, without being able to quantify it.
Can I have a moment, John?
Yes.
Now, doctor, from the internal and external examination that you conducted in regard to Mr. O'Keefe, as well as the other materials that you reviewed, were you able to come to an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to the cause of death of John O'Keefe?
Yes, the cause of death was due to blunt impact injuries of the head and hypothermia.
Okay.
Thank you, doctor.
And notice you
All right,
didn't
no further questions.
freaking ask.
All right, cross-examination.
All right, here we go. Well, I didn't even put on my banner. Hold on. Let me fix this banner
Good morning,
here.
Dr. Scordi-Bello.
People.
Good morning.
Ms. Little, keep your voice up.
Absolutely. You testified regarding a number of injuries that you referred to as blunt impact injuries, correct?
Yes,
And to be clear, blunt impact injuries are a very, very large category that includes contusions, lacerations.
I wonder if she's going to
abrasions,
ask my question.
correct.
And you testified similarly that a blunt object can also refer to a large range of objects. Is that right?
Correct.
And I think yesterday you gave the example of a
Right.
microphone being a blunt object.
Correct.
It could also
Hmm.
include something like a baseball bat,
Correct.
a dumbbell,
Could be.
the ground,
Yes.
or a German Shepherd's claws.
Claws. Possibly. Yes.
You'd agree that John O'Keefe had a number of blunt impact injuries on his face, on his head, and his right arm.
Yes.
Besides his right arm, which we'll discuss in a second, taking his body from the neck down, he did not have any significant injuries.
From the neck down. Not significant. No.
Let's take those one at a time. No injury whatsoever to his shoulders.
Correct.
No injuries whatsoever to his chest area, aside from sort of the CPR-related injuries that you discussed.
Yes. Correct.
And that was in the sternum. Is that right?
It was in the ribs, just adjacent to the sternum. Yes.
No injuries to his torso, other than that.
No.
No injuries to his back.
No.
No injuries to his hips.
Correct.
No injuries to his pelvis.
Correct.
No injuries to his thighs.
To his.
Thighs.
No.
No injuries to his knees.
Correct.
No injuries to his shins.
Correct.
No injuries to his ankles.
Yeah.
Correct.
No injuries to his feet.
Correct.
From the neck down, he did not have a single broken bone, again, aside from those CPR-related injuries you discussed, correct?
That's correct.
Not a single fracture.
Other than CPR. Correct.
And you spoke earlier about how the bumper was a little higher than on, say, a regular sedan, correct?
Correct.
And so usually in a pedestrian collision, you would see injuries to the knees, is that right?
Objection.
This is my question. It sounds like excellent.
Depending on the kind of car, depending on the speed,
Right.
depending
So
on the height
an
of the
SUV
individual and the car, you might see injuries to their lower extremity. Yeah.
But in this case, you didn't see any injuries to his thighs, to his pelvis, anything even at the height of the bumper, is that correct?
Correct. At a very minor abrasion to the side of his right knee.
So surely you'd agree that John O'Keefe's injuries, or lack thereof, are inconsistent with having been struck by a 7,000-pound vehicle at 24 miles per hour and being projected 30 feet.
Objection.
Sustained. Break it down, ask it differently.
Would you agree that John O'Keefe's injuries, or lack thereof, are inconsistent with having been struck by a vehicle at 24 miles per hour?
I would say it's likely and unlikely at the same time, depending on the position of the body and the vehicle in question.
Well, let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say the person were standing with their arm like this, and they were struck
If you
by
could
the
see her
rear
arm.
taillight of a vehicle at 24 miles per hour. Would you agree that his injuries are inconsistent with that scenario?
Objection.
Sustained.
Maybe approach, Your Honor.
Sure.
All right, while they approach, I'm gonna go forward here as they approach. Maybe it'll be a long approach. Maybe I should. Oh wait, here they come. All right, cool.
You are unmuted.
Would you agree that John O'Keefe's injuries to his arm, let's start there, are inconsistent with having been struck by a vehicle at 24 miles per hour and then causing him to spin around and be projected 30 feet?
Okay, so you need to break it down.
Yeah, compound.
Would you agree that John O'Keefe's injury to his arm are inconsistent with having been struck by a vehicle at 24 miles per hour?
I don't know. I am not a reconstruction
Nah,
expert.
right, well-
I'm not a biomechanics expert. I never personally inspected the car, so I can't offer an opinion on that.
Well, sounds like we're just gonna have to call in one of those people, huh?
Yes,
You observed no significant bruising,
correct,
no fractures,
correct,
and no broken bones.
correct.
I'd like to talk about the injuries to John O'Keefe's face. You testified that Mr. O'Keefe had a laceration on his right upper eyelid.
Correct.
You also described multiple abrasions on his nose.
2, yes,
Although these injuries may not have been the ultimate cause of his death, you'd agree that less severe injuries can still be very important in interpreting the manner or the context in which that person died, correct?
correct,
And in furtherance of that, you've been taught that when doing an autopsy, details matter,
correct,
no matter how small.
correct,
And that's one of the reasons as a medical examiner, you have to notate every single injury you find on a person. Is that
correct.
right? If I could show you. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes. Show Mr. Lally.
Hold on, I'll go forward while they approach.
Do you recognize that photograph?
I do.
And is that a photograph that was taken in connection with your autopsy?
Yes, it was taken at the time of autopsy after the face was cleaned.
I'm
I'm sorry, after what?
The face was cleaned up.
Okay.
going to Your Honor.
Any objections,
Oh.
Lally?
Wait, hold on. Am I hearing this correctly? That there's autopsy pictures? Hold on. There's autopsy pictures that Lally, the Commonwealth, they did not like admit into evidence. What? I don't. What? Why wouldn't?
Permission to publish?
Yes.
Sadly, it doesn't really surprise me all that much.
Are these the facial injuries that you were testifying to earlier?
Yes.
And could you kind of describe in that photograph what injuries you observed to his face?
The orbital ecchymosis on both eyes, the small laceration to the right eyelid, the abrasions on the nose.
And you testified that the injuries to his face were also the result of a blunt force trauma.
Correct.
So that's the laceration to the eye and the 2 abrasions that we see there on his nose.
Correct.
And you agree that those injuries don't just manifest out of nowhere, right?
Absolutely.
They have to originate from something.
Yes.
Would you agree that his injuries to his face are consistent with having been punched?
That is a possibility.
All right.
You can take that down, Mr. Bates. Thank you. Your internal examination notes also cite a tongue laceration on the right front of the victim's tongue. Do you recall
Oh,
that?
Yes.
And
interesting.
you'd agree that a
Tongue
tongue
laceration.
laceration
We had not
can
heard
be
that
also
before.
caused by blunt force trauma.
Correct.
And that could also include something like a punch to the victim's face or jaw.
That's a possibility.
In addition to the facial injuries, you described that Mr. O'Keefe had a significant laceration on the back of his head.
He had 1 laceration to the back of his head. Correct.
I believe we saw a photograph of that a
Yes.
little bit earlier. You testified that the skin around the laceration on the back of his head was also scratched. Do you recall
Yes.
that?
I do.
But you did not testify as to how you opined that might have happened.
No.
Would you agree that someone could certainly get scratched on the back of their head if they were, for instance, dragged on the ground?
It's possible.
You described the open wound to the back of his head as a laceration, which is sort of a blunt force injury that's not the result of sharp force trauma. Is that right?
Yes.
Mhm.
And you'd agree that Mr. O'Keefe's head injury came from some sort of blow to the back of the head, whether it be an object or the ground. Is that
Yep.
right?
Yes.
Objection.
And that injury could be the result of falling backward from a standing position onto concrete.
It's possible.
It could also be the result of being struck with a large object such as a baseball bat or a barbell.
It's possible.
In
So,
other words, it was an irregular laceration that resulted from some blunt force trauma.
Correct.
one thing, let me pause this real quick. So one thing that I thought was really interesting that we learned yesterday was about John O'Keefe's blood alcohol level. Because it was really, really, really high. And I think that the one that they took where it was like from the eyeball thing or whatever, it was like almost 0.3, basically. And so that's like a fuck ton. So it does add into the possibilities potentially. Of course, there's already so many possibilities that that he could have just fallen, like being that drunk, right? He could have just fallen on his own. Like he could have just slipped and fallen. Like, wouldn't that be crazy, right? Like, actually, I was talking to Kitsmits about this in the Discord of like, you know, I was giving that scenario of like the fancy dinner party I've referenced many times, like a la Clue, the game, you know, where like you picture everybody at the Albert's house, right? And they're all like drinking and they're like, oh, darling, right? Or whatever. And like, it's like the game of Clue where like, but like, or everyone's drunk, right? And so then like, let's just say that, you know, they're all shit faced or whatever. And then like the next day, it's like somebody's died, right? And they look to their left and they're like, well, that person could have done it. And they look to the right. And it's like, that person could have done it. And then like, wait, I could have done it. And it's funny because Karen's response was kind of similar. Like, wait, what if I had something to do with it? But I mean, potentially, right? Like, I think at best, her words of like, did I hit him? It's obviously it's not a confession. It's that same thing of like, well, she was also drinking, right? And I think it's funny because it's like she's almost in a way, maybe in this scenario, in the same position as everybody at the house, with the exception of the fact that she wasn't at the party. So that makes her an easy like fall person, right? For everybody else. But what if instead what happened was, you know, John O'Keefe fell and hit his head on, let's say, the fire hydrant or whatever, right? And actually it was nobody. But nobody knows that because they were all drunk and nobody saw it happen, right? Wouldn't that be crazy? I mean, we can't rule it out at this point. He could have fallen. I mean, that's what she was just asking. He could have fallen and hit his head, you know?
I'd like to sort of circle
Wild.
back to those injuries to Mr. O'Keefe's arm. You testified that there were, again, no fractures, no broken bones, no significant contusions.
Correct.
But you did describe the wounds to Mr. O'Keefe's arm as having discrete linear abrasions, which were caused by some sort of blunt object, correct?
Yes.
What does discrete mean?
It means each one is an individual injury as opposed to confluent, where it would be all meshed together.
Your Honor, if I could publish what's been previously marked as Exhibit 19.
Okay.
And these are sort of the linear wounds that you're referring to.
Yes.
And you testified that
All
these
right.
also sort of appear in clusters or groups. You call them
Yes.
pattern abrasions. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
And you'd agree that, for example, road rash does not result in this type of discrete linear wounds.
It could, but not exactly like this.
Well, typically road rash covers sort of a large area of the skin. It would be a large abrasion. I mean, you've seen numerous cases of road rash in your
Yes.
career. And it doesn't look like that.
Correct.
Blunt force trauma can include injuries from various objects, as you testified, including an animal claw, correct?
Correct.
And you'd agree that these discrete linear abrasions are inconsistent with having been struck by a smooth rear tail light at 24 miles per hour.
Objection.
Can you answer that, doctor?
I can't. By
Okay.
smooth, no.
All right, next question.
By a smooth rear tail light, you said that is not what you would see at 24 miles per hour, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
As you testified earlier, you've indicated that based on the facts that were presented to you, you don't know what caused those significant scratches on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm.
I do not.
May I approach, Your Honor? Sure.
If I could just see what was.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lally.
Oh boy, she looks so Lally.
Do you recognize that photograph?
I do. It's a photograph of Mr. O'Keefe's right hand.
May I mark that as next morning?
Is there an objection?
May we approach?
Oh, all right. Approaching. Let me just skip ahead for that. Approaching.
You are unmuted.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Permission to publish?
Well, we need to mark it first. So we'll mark it for identification, and then when it's appropriate, it will be transferred to being an exhibit.
Thank you.
But yes, you can publish. Is it all set to be published appropriately?
Yes, Your Honor.
The triple N for identification. Okay.
Dr. Scordi-Bello, you indicated on direct examination that at least that one of the bruises from Mr. O'Keefe's right hand could potentially be attributed to an attempt to get IV fluid into the hand. Is that correct?
Correct.
During the course of your conducting your autopsy, you reviewed records from the Canton Fire Department and EMS, as well as Good Samaritan Hospital. Is that correct?
I did.
And do you recall reviewing records indicating that the IV fluids in this particular case were administered through the tibia and then later through a catheter at the hospital?
Yes, they were administered through intraosseous lines in both legs, shins, and at the hospital, they were administered through a femoral central line. Yes.
And you'd agree that bruising to the backs of hands.
I mean, that does look like an IV though, doesn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
I know. Well, at least he's
And there are
not.
actually
At least he's
four
gone
separate
now.
distinct bruises outside of the one that
Or
you discussed
redirect.
earlier on Mr. O'Keefe's right hand, correct?
Yes, I would say 3, but I can see how you would say 4. 1, 2, 3. That might be 1 together. But yes, I can see how you would say 4.
And you testified yesterday that there was also an injury to Mr. O'Keefe's left hand.
There was a vague contusion on his left hand, correct?
You were asked by Mr. Lally.
Can we take
on-
this down now, Ms. Little?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh my God.
You testified on direct examination that you didn't see any sort of obvious signs of a fight because Mr. O'Keefe's fingernails were intact and you didn't observe any fractures on his hands. Is that right?
Correct.
But broken fingernails and fractured hands aren't the only observable signs of a fight. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
In fact, you noted a laceration over his eye.
Yes.
You noticed multiple lacerations on his nose.
Abrasions on his nose. Yes.
And
Yes.
The nose is
multiple
interesting.
abrasions on his
The nose is
Correct.
interesting, and so is like the
You noticed a
tongue.
laceration to his tongue.
Yes.
I will
Noted
say.
contusions on the back of his right hand.
I will say that if you imagine like being struck from the front, from behind, or even just falling, right, slipping and falling, and you're, you know, especially if you're drunk and stuff, I could see potentially maybe like accidentally biting his tongue. I mean, it doesn't sound like he like full on bit his tongue, but I don't know. I'm just trying to think like a laceration on the tongue is an interesting one. I think she's about to probably mention that again.
Correct.
The injury, the contusion to his left hand as well.
Correct.
And as you just testified, bruising on the back of hands may be consistent with defensive wounds.
It could be.
So in fact, if you have a body that presents with a laceration to one of the brows, a laceration or abrasions to the nose, an egg over an eye, contusions and abrasions on the hands, and a laceration to the tongue, these injuries
Laceration
are
to the tongue.
consistent with a physical altercation, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Are those injuries consistent with a physical altercation?
Objection.
Sustained.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Sure.
Oh boy. Approach, approach.
You are unmuted.
Shifting gears for a second, you indicated on direct examination that you reviewed some photographs from law enforcement that showed no footprints in the snow. Do you recall that testimony?
I do.
Were those provided to you by Trooper Proctor?
Yes.
Do you have those photographs with you?
No, I don't.
Do you recall what was depicted in those photographs?
Yes. If I remember correctly, it was the area of the fire hydrant and the area where Mr. O'Keefe's body was discovered. It's the front of the house. the area of the fire hydrant and I believe the flagpole.
Thank you. You testified that Mr. O'Keefe had multiple fractures to his skull, but that they seemed to be
I wonder-
originating from a single point of impact on the back.
I wonder what that question was about. I wonder if it's because they're planning on wanting to be able to argue in closing that he could have actually fallen and hit his head on that fire hydrant. Because that was my first thought, the very beginning, once I discovered this, once we started with opening statements, and then I started watching this trial, and before I was even covering it, like my first thought was that fire hydrant, right? So I wonder if that was why she asked that question, was just so that they can then harken back to that during closing. Because the idea, right, there's so many possibilities here. And the more possibilities, the better, right? Because that means the Commonwealth didn't prove anything. So.
It appeared so, yes.
Are you reasonably certain that all of his injuries were the result of a single impact to the back of the head?
It could be a single impact.
But it also could be multiple impacts, correct?
It could be, yes.
Because as you just testified, Mr. O'Keefe suffered multiple injuries to the front of his face as well.
Correct.
In other words, he could have suffered trauma to the face and then fallen and sustained the injury to the back of the head, correct?
That is possible, yes.
And you testified before the state grand jury that the areas of bruising to the brain were likely due to a fall. Is that correct?
Yes.
In your expert medical opinion, is it possible for someone to get punched in the face hard enough to lose consciousness and fall backward?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Yeah,
It's possible.
Yeah.
If I can have one more.
Sure.
May I see the exhibits that were just marked, Your Honor? Your Honor, if I could have permission to publish what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 19.
Yes.
Dr. Scordi-Bello, it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but there's some redness that you observe on the body by the ribs that we observed in some of the other photographs that were presented by Mr. Lally.
We have just one yard.
Yes.
Why is he asking for a moment when she's the one anyway?
I'd like to show you what's been previously marked as People's Exhibit 648. Ms. Gilman, would it be, Mr. Bates, could you take that down? Ms. Gilman, would it be possible to display Exhibit 648? 648. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
2853. Dr. Scordi-Bello, you were shown this photograph by Mr. Lally on direct examination.
Yes.
Do you see the redness sort of next to his rib cage on the bottom? Correct.
Yes.
What is that?
That is livor.
Lividity?
Lividity. Yes.
Can you describe to the jury what lividity is?
Yes. Lividity is the pooling of blood to the dependent areas of the body after someone is deceased.
So even though it sort of appears to look like a bruise, that's lividity, correct?
That is lividity. Yes. It goes all the way down.
And it's not the result of an injury.
No.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, the lights, please. Thank you. Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Scordi-Bello, you did observe a minor abrasion to Mr. O'Keefe's right knee, is that correct?
Correct.
And what part of the knee was that on, if you recall?
It was on the side, on the lateral side of his right knee.
And by lateral, sort of the side that faces away from the body, is that correct?
Correct.
We're asked whether or not the small injuries on Mr. O'Keefe's face could possibly be from a punch, is that correct?
Correct.
You said that's one of the possibilities, is that correct?
Yes.
What are some of the other
Manner.
Could be impact during a fall. It could be coming in contact with any blunt object in the snow.
Would glass be a possibility as far as a
Oh,
blunt
for
object?
fuck's sake, Lolly. That's a possibility is not what you need.
Could be under
What
certain
is wrong with
circumstances.
you?
Uh,
And she's not even a
so
dude.
plastic under certain circumstances as far as a blunt object, would that be also a possibility?
So
Correct. Yes.
here's the thing. When Lolly asked her on direct first time, like, is this consistent with a car accident or whatever? She's like, yeah, it's not typically what we see, blah, blah. And then now it's like, could it have possibly have been glass? It's like, oh, it could be possibly. It's like, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. Like, I mean, I know y'all know that, but just to reiterate, this is insane. Like, beyond a reasonable doubt, Lolly, come on. No, honestly, everything that we've heard from her and from every witness, so there's no difference to me, right? Like, all the way through, every witness, in my opinion, has helped the defense.
Now, as far as
it's special.
the abrasion near the laceration on the back,
It's
of
very
the throat,
special.
you were asking questions about whether or not that could be from drag, correct?
Correct.
Now, as far as injuries or abrasions concerning dragging, would it be typical to see just one isolated abrasion in the area of the laceration?
Not typical, but possible.
Could that also be a result of the blunt impacts or, as one of the possibilities you testified before, from hitting the ground?
Yes.
Now, you were asked about hitting the ground, specifically hitting concrete. Would that impact injuries to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head also be consistent with striking his head on frozen ground?
I'm sorry.
No, I'll allow it.
Can you repeat the question?
You were asked a question on cross-examination about the laceration and abrasion to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head being consistent with striking his head on concrete, correct?
Yes.
Would that also be consistent with striking his head on frozen ground?
Could be. Yes.
You were asked about certain wounds as being a possibility of defensive wounds. What are some of the other types of defensive wounds that you would expect to see that you did not see in this case?
I would expect to see, or I have seen, multiple bruising to the, again, posterior aspects of the forearms. I have seen cuts, lacerations, depending on how a person might be defending themselves, the position of their arms.
And would that also include breaks in the fingernails and fractures to the hands?
Objection.
Watch the form, Mr. Lally, sustained.
What, if anything else, would that include?
It might include bruising to the knuckles. It might include broken fingers.
Now, with reference to the injuries that you were asked about with respect to Mr. O'Keefe's right hand, would those also be consistent with impact from a blunt object as well?
They are blunt impact injuries. Yes.
Now, again, if I could, just with reference to, you were asked about different possibilities with the skull fractures and bleeding in the brain. What is your opinion as to sort of how that was caused and sort of, if you could, again, just go through your opinion as to the head injuries, the skull fracture, and the bleeding?
Objection.
Ask it again, Mr. Lally, in a different way.
You were asked about some possibilities. What is your opinion as to how those injuries were sustained or manifested in Mr. O'Keefe?
Well, there's only possibilities, Lolly.
I don't know how they
Right. Oh my
came to
God,
be.
what is wrong with him?
I described them and I stated previously that they are consistent with a fall to the back of the head.
At least she's standing her
Sorry,
ground.
Dr. Look, my question
know-
is more geared towards as far
Oh my God. You know what's interesting though? It's like she didn't cave to Proctor trying to get her to change it to a homicide, and she's also not gonna cave to Lolly trying to ask her to be more specific when she's like, we don't
Yes.
fucking know. Everything's
single
possible.
impact to the back of the skull and then sort of radiating fractures in the skull. If you could explain that in reference to the subdural hemorrhage, subarachnoid hemorrhage, and the ecchymoses that you observed.
Again, a single impact with a fall could cause
But I'll
all
repeat it
the
again
injuries
for
that
you.
were seen in the brain and the skull.
So there you go.
No further questions.
All right, doctor, you are all set. Thank you very much.
Okay, who do you guys think will be next? I wonder who's going to be next, guys. Holy shit. That's it. She's done. Are they going to rest? Wait, what's going to happen? Oh my God. Y'all. What's going to happen?
All right, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Commonwealth Rests.
Fucking hell. They're resting. Holy shit, guys.
Let's remove the court for.
So I'm going to stop you right there.
Oh my God. Is it motion for
Short
verdict?
recess?
Fuck. No.
I don't need one, but I will see you at 7.
Oh my God. Is it going to be motion for directed verdict? I've been waiting for this moment ever since this trial started. When is the motion? Okay, there's the only fan. Holy shit, they rested. They rested. They're done. Okay, motion for directed verdict. Is that what's happening? Oh my God, I'm so excited. Oh my God. You guys, I'm so excited.
Proceed according to session.
Wow.
You are unmuted.
All right, so Mr. Jackson, yesterday you told me you would like 10 minutes for your argument. I'll hear you now.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I'll be brief. The court must consider, after viewing the evidence in light
Gotta
most
be a
favorable
motion.
to the Commonwealth, whether a rational
Yep.
jury could find the elements of the charges.
Yes,
beyond
motion for
a
directed
reasonable
verdict.
doubt. And
Let's
here, the
go.
case that the Commonwealth has submitted
Let's
to the jury after
go.
resting is insufficient to meet such a finding. There's no question, but
Fuck yeah.
with this particular prosecution in this particular case, no reasonable or rational jury could come to a unanimous verdict in favor of the Commonwealth.
I agree. Only
If I can, focus my argument on count 1, 2,
Wow.
and 3, and a specific element of each
okay.
count.
I'm
In each one
he's
of those
talking
counts.
real fucking fast. Let me back. I want to hear this again from the beginning of his argument. I have been waiting for this since day one. Opening statements.
Your Honor, I'll
Fucking
be brief. The court must consider, after viewing the evidence in light most favorable to the Commonwealth, whether a rational jury could find the elements of the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. And here, the case that the Commonwealth has submitted to the jury after resting is insufficient to meet such a finding. There's no question, but that with this particular prosecution in this particular case, no reasonable or rational jury could come to a unanimous verdict in favor of the Commonwealth. I want to, if I can, focus my argument on count 1, 2, and 3, and a specific element of each count.
Okay.
In each one of those counts, there must be evidence that the vehicle killed John O'Keefe.
Yep.
There has been no competent evidence presented in the Commonwealth's case that Karen Reed's vehicle actually struck John O'Keefe. There's been conjecture, there's been speculation, but no actual competent evidence. The Commonwealth's entire case relies on a theory built on the shoulders of a trooper named Joe Paul, who testified a couple of days ago. And his theory, according to the Commonwealth, is that John O'Keefe's arm was struck, he was spun around in sort of a pirouette, he was
Yeah.
projected 30 feet to the left, hit his head on a curb or the road in the intervening time before coming to a final rest spot about 30 feet away. Everything in the Commonwealth's case, everything relies on that theory of damage to the taillight at the scene. If a rational jury could not unanimously determine that Trooper Joe Paul's theory is true beyond a reasonable doubt, then we believe the motion has to be granted. There is no competent medical evidence to support that theory. There's no competent physical evidence that the taillight could break and shatter in the way that they've suggested, and that the arm would not have any breaks or shatters or any damage, any additional damage. There's no evidence how getting hit in the arm could actually launch a body 30 feet, as per the Commonwealth's theory. And there's no evidence how a body hit by a 7,000-pound SUV could sustain no injuries from the neck down, which we just heard this morning. The evidence before the court, the only evidence that is before the court, is that the Commonwealth's own medical examiner does not believe this is a homicide. And she went on this morning to say that in her expert opinion,
Let me put a thing up.
injuries are not classic pedestrian injuries. And they are, every single one of them, consistent with a physical altercation. Calling a witness to simply espouse an opinion like Trooper Paul did that belies science, common sense, or logic, that's not enough to get the case to the jury.
Yes.
The light most favorable to the Commonwealth does not mean that the court must believe the Commonwealth's witnesses. What it means is that if there is a rational...
What he's saying here is really important. So with these motions for directed verdict, right? We see this. I've been talking about this the whole time. Y'all have heard. But every trial, the defense will always do this right after the prosecution rests. This is just par for the course. We saw it in Murdoch. We see it in every trial. And oftentimes it's just really kind of a technicality, if you want to say, or like a like a formality. Like for example, in Murdoch, I don't think that they thought that there was his defense attorney thought that this motion for a directed verdict would be granted, right? However, you would have an appellate issue for, like, you know, if you didn't do it, like you have to do it, right? And very rarely do these go anywhere. This case is an exception. Now, having said that, unfortunately, because Judge Bev will be making this decision, I don't know. I think that with many other judges, most other judges, you know what I mean? Like, she's been tough. She's been tough as far as her potential bias and her rulings. So I don't know, because with Judge Bev, it's a little bit tricky. I don't know that she would go for it, but I think that 99.9% of other judges, you know, in the state or the country, like they would, you know, really at least strongly consider this. So anyway, but my point is that he keeps mentioning the light most favorable to the Commonwealth, because that's the standard that's used for a motion for directed verdict. So in this case, with these motions, the judge actually has to view things in that light. That is, it's not biased per se, but it is, you know, it has to be more favorable to the Commonwealth. Most favorable. And so in that case, that's the standard that you have to be able to bypass in order for this to be potentially granted.
Controversy in the evidence, the court must accept that evidence that favors the Commonwealth. But here, there is no rational controversy. As put or expressed in Commonwealth versus McCormick, it's a 2023 case found at 491 Mass 848, pinpoint site 860, quote, where the Commonwealth's evidence is entirely circumstantial, it cannot meet its burden if the evidence equally supports inconsistent propositions, as resolution of such a case necessarily requires conjecture or surmise. In our view, there is no question that there's no rational controversy related to the Commonwealth's theory. Trooper Paul's theory is by definition not rational. It's not reasonable. And it's basically based entirely on conjecture. And that's why, in our view, the court is required to find Ms. Reed not guilty of counts 1, 2, and 3. It's because each of the counts, as I said at the beginning, necessarily include an element that John O'Keefe was struck by Karen Reed's vehicle. Thus, if a rational jury cannot reasonably believe Trooper Paul's theory, it's the only evidence presented by the Commonwealth describing how Mr. O'Keefe possibly could have been struck, then Ms. Reed is entitled to an acquittal. Nothing else matters. Nothing else in the court's evaluation, nothing else in the jury's evaluation, nothing. Everything turns on whether or not the car hit John O'Keefe. And the Commonwealth's only theory of how that happened is from Trooper Paul's description. If the court were to deny this motion, then by doing so tacitly, the court is expressly endorsing Trooper Paul's theory of how John O'Keefe was struck, and we don't believe that that's rational.
No.
We don't believe that any rational jury would ever unanimously agree with Trooper Paul.
Yes.
And thus, we ask
100%.
Ms. Reed not guilty at this time.
Okay.
I'll submit.
All right, now Wally's going to have
If
to
I may just,
argue.
we have a written motion for the
Okay.
court to act on pursuant to that argument. May I request?
Come on.
All right, I will hear you, Mr. Lally.
There's a motion. What?
Yes, Your Honor. Surprisingly, I would disagree with counsel's sort of.
So let's leave the
Oh my
comments out.
Your Honor, as far as the
Watch
comments, all I was going to say is that I would submit to the court that,
Is this surprisingly that I took issue?
and my apologies for that. What I would submit to the court, Your Honor, is that this case does not rest and fall with the testimony of Trooper Paul. Trooper Paul's testimony, while important,
Wally.
in conjunction with the remainder of all of the other witnesses.
Yeah, it just gets worse, Lolly. You're wanting to include the other witnesses, say Trooper Paul, Brian Higgins, the McAlberts. Like, that is not, I mean, I don't know. I was going to say it's not a strong argument. I don't know that I don't think there is an argument he can make, but he's like, this doesn't rest just with Trooper Paul. You have to consider all the witnesses. It's like, well, to be honest, that just makes it worse, right?
All the
So,
other
my
testimony,
opinion.
that the court has heard.
It's like
Uh,
including Trooper Paul
I don't
and
wanna
everyone,
minimize it, but
right?
at the same time,
Everybody.
that is not the only evidence that the
Fucking
vehicle
hell.
struck Mr. O'Keefe or interacted with Mr. O'Keefe. So what the court has, as far as the physical evidence, next to Mr. O'Keefe's body, the one sneaker in the location of the curb, the glass, the drinking glass that Mr. O'Keefe is seen walking out of the Waterfall Bar at approximately 12:11 a.m. with, that is in the vicinity, the direct vicinity where the Canton police officers actually recover it early in the morning of January 29th. You have the microscopic pieces of the defendant's taillight, which was testified by Ms. Hanley to be consistent with pieces of the taillight from the defendant's vehicle that are within or embedded within Mr. O'Keefe's clothing. You have the remainder of the pieces of taillight. And
Why are you just reviewing all the shitty evidence? That's not evidence that you presented.
And path of all of the
He was
roadway
here.
evidence,
She knows.
that's discovered in and around the area where Mr. O'Keefe's body was. The testimony from Ms. Valier, with reference to all of those taillight pieces and how they were able to reconstruct front pieces that were found on the ground and then put back together, matching not only to that, but the taillight housing from the defendant's vehicle. The taillight housing from the defendant's vehicle, which has the victim's, Mr. O'Keefe's DNA contained on it, as well as the mitochondrial DNA testing of the hair that was on the rear right quarter panel of the defendant's vehicle, which also was matched or consistent with that of Mr. O'Keefe, his mitochondrial DNA, as well as court heard from Ms. Chart from Bodie Technology. You have the plethora of testimony from the various civilian witnesses from that particular night. You have the evidence of motive from the text communications, as well as the testimony of the children in this case as to the state of their relationship from the defendant's own mouth in those text communications and in those voicemails as to the state of their relationship. You have the testimony in regard to Mr. O'Keefe and his recounting of the state of their relationship and his numerous attempts to break it off with Ms. Reed prior to that date. There are arguments that continue throughout the afternoon of the 28th and seemingly into the 29th. You have the defendant's own statements that I hit him.
Why are you?
Come from multiple sources, including firefighter Nuttall, firefighter Famati, firefighter McLaughlin,
Stupid.
You have her statements to the paramedics in the back of the ambulance that the last time that she saw Mr.
You know what's so
O'Keefe,
crazy?
they
This
got
is just
into an
annoying.
argument.
Like,
you have the
Jackson was done by now with his argument. He took 2 minutes. He didn't even go over the everything that Lally is naming right now are all of the reasons why she cannot be found guilty. So while Jackson could have gone through this exhaustive list, he spared the court and us that, and now Lolly's doing it.
The testimony in regard to Ms. Roberts and Ms. McCabe as far as the altercation or the verbal argument stemming from Ms. McCabe's reference of Bella's mother being a landmark, being someone that Mr. O'Keefe used to date just prior to that argument occurring in front of the house at 34 Fairview Road. With each and every piece of evidence that was presented throughout the course of the Commonwealth's case, including the forensic evidence, including especially one thing I would stress for the court is taking not only Trooper Paul's testimony, but Trooper Paul's testimony in juxtaposition to Trooper Garino's testimony as far as the vehicle or the native GPS locations of Mr. O'Keefe's phone in reference to the timing and in particular the information or data from the Toyota text stream. Trooper Garino's GPS native location of Mr. O'Keefe's phone has that reversal, the same 3-point turn that Trooper Paul testified about, which occurs 8 minutes prior to the vehicle traveling 24.2 miles per hour for approximately 62 feet in a straight line in reverse. And as far as the testimony and the evidence that the court has before it, the court also has those backup testing videos that Trooper Paul conducted with the defendant's vehicle, so the court can see exactly what that vehicle looks like at approximately 25 miles per hour in reverse in a straight line. And what I would submit, Your Honor, is that there's more than sufficient evidence from a medical perspective, from a forensic perspective, from a civilian witness perspective, and from the investigation of this case as to all three indictments. The Commonwealth has met its burden, particularly under the standard before the court at this time. And for those reasons, I would request that the defendant's motion be denied.
Okay. Right. In the light most favorable to the Commonwealth under the prevailing Lattimore standard here in Massachusetts, I am
does-
satisfied the Commonwealth has met its burden.
Of course you
The
are.
defendant's motion is
You
denied.
would be.
So, Mr. Yannetti, are you calling your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
So let's bring the jurors in,
Wow.
please.
Holy fuck. Defense is case in chief, you guys. Wow. What a day. I did not expect all this. I mean, I guess I was still waiting for the Commonwealth to prove anything, but yet they've rested. So here we are. Crazy. Defense's case in chief, you guys. Holy shit. Holy shit. This is insane. We are finally here. So this is crazy because today is Friday. They only have a handful of witnesses, it sounds like 4 or 5 or something like that. So I wonder, we'll see. Depends on if Judge Bev lets everybody, and how she limits them, I guess, too. Speed up all the, bring in the jury. Bring the jury. Yeah, I guess they're taking quite a while. Hold on, people. All right, here we go. I mean, right? I know. It's insane.
Thank you. This court's back in session. Please be seated.
All right, so jurors, if you remember in my preliminary instructions to you a long time ago now, I stressed to you that the burden of proof rests with the Commonwealth. The defendant has no burden of proof whatsoever, doesn't ever have to testify or present any evidence. So the Commonwealth has completed its case, the Commonwealth has rested, and I want you to keep in mind that the defendant has no burden of proof. Ms. Yannetti, do you have a witness for us?
Thank you very much, Your Honor. The defense calls Brian Loughran.
Okay.
Oh, this is the snowplow driver, I believe. Oh boy. Oh my God, I'm so excited because this is going to be such a different quality, or no, or than what we were so used to. Like now, direct examination.
The evidence given to the court and jury in the case now and hearing the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the
Here's what a
truth.
real direct examination looks like.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Good morning, sir. In a good loud voice, would you state your name and spell your last name?
Sure, it's Brian Loughran. It's Loughran.
And where are you from,
Mr.
sir?
Loughran, I'm going to ask you to keep your
Fucking
voice up
hell.
as loud as you can.
I wonder if it's a BRI
Sorry.
That's
or
okay.
May
BRI.
put your
They're
mouth
all-
as close to the mic as you can. Where did you grow up, sir?
Canton, Mass.
Is that where you live?
Yes,
How long
This
have
is
you lived
witness
there?
number 69.
both 35, 36 years.
And did you go to Canton Public Schools?
Yes,
I'm going to rewind it real quick
Now,
just
in
for
the
his
course
last
of
name
living in
spelling,
Canton,
real quick.
sorry.
That's okay.
may put your. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
All right.
Good morning, sir. In a good loud voice, would you state your name and spell your last name?
Sure, it's Brian Loughran. It's Loughran.
And where are you from, sir?
Mr. Loughran, I'm going to ask you
All
to
right.
keep your voice up as loud as you can, sir.
Sorry.
That's okay.
May put your mouth as close to the mic as you can. Where did you grow up, sir?
Canton, Mass.
Is that where you live?
Yes,
How long have you lived there?
both 35, 36 years.
And did you go to Canton Public Schools?
Yes,
Now, in the course of living in Canton, were you familiar with the Albert family?
yes,
Oh boy.
Which members of the Albert family were you familiar with?
I keep
All of them.
thinking that
And when you say all of them,
can't wait to hear from him. I love him already. Candace, I've thought this the entire time, right? There's been a lot of moments that I'm like, man, the
can you name the ones that you were familiar with?
moment that they
I was
realized
familiar with Brian,
she didn't.
Brian Albert?
Chris Albert, Brendan Albert, Kevin Albert, and I believe Kathy Albert's the sister, but I'm not 100% sure of her first name.
Okay, and those are the siblings that you had contact with and were familiar with?
Yes,
Did you know some better than others?
yes,
Whom did you know the best?
Chris Albert.
What is the age difference between you and Chris Albert?
I believe we're the same age.
Did you graduate high school with him?
He went to a different high school, but
Okay.
yes,
Graduated at the same time.
correct.
And with regard to your familiarity with Chris Albert, can you explain to the jury how you became familiar with him and what your relationship with him has been?
I went to school with him, elementary school.
Oh
We
my
went
God.
to middle school, then he transferred to
Wow.
a
So they've been
Catholic school.
Lifelong friend. Holy
And
shit.
then later in years, I began to work for Chris for D&E Pizza, delivering pizzas.
Okay.
Oh,
And,
wow.
Approximately what ages were you when you were delivering pizzas for D&E Pizza and
Wow.
Chris Albert?
I was 25, 26 years old,
And how many years did
Wow.
you deliver pizzas for him?
up until I got married, 35,
Wow.
So several years,
8 years.
8 years. Okay.
Wow.
And with regard to your interactions or knowledge of Kevin Albert, can you describe that?
Kevin Albert would be through D&E Pizza if he came in.
Mhm.
Through the police department, would see him on details.
All right. And were you friendly with him?
Yes,
With regard to Brian Albert, could you describe your interactions or your relationship with him?
again, through D&E Pizzas, delivering pizzas to his house. Cordial, polite, would say hello.
All right. So you're friendly with the Albert family.
Correct.
Now,
Wild.
back in
Being called by the
January of
police here.
2022, where were you working?
I was working for the town of Canton.
In what department?
I was working in the sewer department.
Is that also called the water department?
Yes, water and sewer are combined.
And under what heading is that? The
It's
water-
DPW.
It's under the DPW, the Department of Public Works.
Correct.
Now, back in January of 2022, were you one of the regular snow plowers for the town of Canton?
Yes.
And directing your attention to January 28th of 2022, do you remember that day?
Yes.
What do you remember about that day, the 28th?
It was a potential blizzard. We had been given a start time.
All right. And when you say you had been given a start time, what does that mean?
It means that we're expected to be in our trucks at a certain time on our route.
And who gives those instructions back in January of 2022?
The supervisor for the Canton DPW,
And who was that at the time?
William Walsh.
Also known as Billy Walsh?
Yes.
Now, when were you called in to do plowing that evening or early morning?
We were told to be in by 2:30
And is that 2:30 a.m. or p.m.?
a.m.
Would that now be on January 29th?
Correct.
So what time did you arrive at the DPW that early morning?
About 2:15.
When you got there, what did you need to do in order to go out plowing?
I needed to get into my truck and get that prepared to go out.
All right. And your truck, is there one that's specifically assigned to you when you plow?
Yes.
And does that truck have any particular nickname?
Yes, it's called a Franken truck.
Uh-huh.
And why is it called the Franken truck?
It is a truck that has a lot of different parts than what it's required. It's not parts that were made for that specific truck.
An older one?
Yes, it was a truck that was very uncomfortable at the beginning to use. So they try to make it as comfortable as possible.
All right. And that particular truck, is it used for anything else other than snow plowing?
Yes. It's used for everyday use.
Now, so you get to the DPW.
Freaking
at
stupid ass
2:15, you
injection
say
in the
you
middle.
get your truck ready. What does that entail to get your truck ready, and how long does it take?
It takes about 5 minutes. We just basically you need to make sure that it's got enough gas in it, so we're not going to the route and running out of diesel fuel, which is not good. It's just basically going over the truck, making sure you have everything you need for that night.
And do you plow alone or with someone?
By myself.
Now, with regard to
Wow.
the visibility in your snowplow Franken truck, can you describe that for the jury, what you can see, what you can't see?
So the Franken truck has an air ride suspensions, an air ride seat. So the seat is raised so I can see over the hood, and I can see about 5 feet on either side of the passenger side, driver's side,
And when you say 5 feet, are you talking straight out from the?
from the windshield straight out.
All right. And what, if any, lighting do you have on Franklin truck?
We have marking lights. We have
That's
2
funny. He
plow
called it,
lights that are situated at the corners of the trucks, and it's up high.
He called it
Illuminates
Frankenstein.
very well.
Stephen.
It's very well seen.
Okay, and with the extra set of lighting that you just described, how far can you see off to the sides, in front of you, and directly in front of you?
Probably 5 feet on the sides.
Well, you already testified to that, 5 feet straight out.
Yeah.
But what about the sides going forward?
It's you know, it's hard to decide to put into words, but I can see a real long distance. That visibility is fine. It is extremely. If you gave me probably 5, 10 feet, 15 feet out, maybe even further.
And with regard to the lighting, how much light does that give off?
Enormous amounts. It's almost driving with a spotlight.
Wow.
And with regard to the air ride seats, what action did you take with those that particular night?
I raised it so that the bottom of my knees would hit the steering wheel.
And what, if any, obstructions, I should say, were in front of you that would prevent you from seeing what's in front of you or to the side?
Nothing.
All right. Now, do you have a specific route assigned to you?
Yes, I do.
Could you describe that route? And by the way, that specific route, was that the one that you were assigned on January 29th?
Correct.
Could you describe that for the jury?
Yes, it's a route that consists of Cedar Crest from Kings Road to Chapman Street and everything in between. There are a lot of streets I could name if you would like, but Fairview is one, Spring Lane is one, Cedar Crest, Kings Road. Those are pretty important roads that I would consider major roads on my route.
All right. Now, that particular night, if you got there at 2:15, what time do you think you were on the road in Franken truck?
I was on Cedar Crest about 2:30, 2:35.
Now, with regard to Cedar Crest, I would like to show you a map if I can. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I've handed you a document. If you could just review that to yourself and then look up at me when you're done. Do you recognize what's depicted on that?
Yes,
What is it?
it is my plow route and consisting of streets that I plow.
All right. And to be fair, that's a portion of your plow route, right?
Correct.
There are other areas of the city that you plow?
This actually depicts my actual physical route.
Oh, okay, great. And that's a fair and accurate representation of the streets as they existed back in January of 2022?
Yes.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
Any objection, Mr. Lally?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you. And can I have permission to publish before the jury?
Sure.
Okay. Now, you just testified that you got to Cedar Crest, I believe you said 2:30 to 2:35 or so?
Correct.
All right, as we look at this exhibit on the screens, are you going from right to left or left to right on Cedar Crest when you first approach Fairview?
Right to left.
Okay, so you're going sort of from the upper right-hand corner of the diagram down Cedar Crest toward Fairview. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Could you take the laser pointer and just confirm that route for the jury? That's, okay. You see that's Fairview Road? Are you able to read that right?
I'm not, to be honest with you. I'm sorry.
Do you still have that map in front of you? Maybe that'll help you, Mr. Lally.
And actually, can I orient it so it's oriented just like that for now? Okay, that's how it's up on the screen.
Okay.
And by the way, I should have asked this, but is it in terms of is it you can't read the writing or you can't really see the outline of the streets?
Both.
Okay. Well, that's not going to help much. Okay. If we can have the lights back on. With the court's permission, can I leave that up on the screen while I ask a few more questions?
Sure, except you said you can't see it.
Right. No, I know, but the jury can, so I think it would be helpful for them. All right. So you're coming down Cedar Crest, and would Fairview be on your left or your right when you first approach it?
When I first approach, it's on my left.
All right. Now, do you take that left at that time?
No, I do not.
Why not?
At the time, I'm pushing snow and we don't want to block any part of the road with snow, and taking a left would have left a row of snow. So I proceed to the end of Cedar Crest, do a cul-de-sac, and then head back up Cedar Crest.
All right, so there's a cul-de-sac at the end of Cedar Crest,
Correct.
dead end,
Yes.
and you plow that?
Yes.
All right, so then when you come back up, is Fairview on your right or your left?
It is on my right.
What do you do?
I take that right and continue to plow.
Now, are you familiar with the Albert residence on Fairview Road?
Yes.
How did you become familiar with that?
Growing up in Canton, I knew where they lived.
Can I have exhibit 66 displayed with the court's permission?
Yes.
From where you're seated now, Mr. Loughran, are you able to see what's on the screen?
Yes.
And do you recognize that?
Yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
That is the Albert house, Brian Albert's.
And when you were passing the Albert home on Fairview, the very first time you passed it, would it have been on your right or your left?
It would have been on my right.
What section of the road were you plowing at that point?
The middle of the road.
Why is that?
I start in the middle and I angle right with the plow.
Now, I want to direct your attention to when you were, your truck was essentially perpendicular to the driveway. You see the driveway in exhibit 66?
Yes, I do.
When you were perpendicular to the driveway, where were your headlights pointed?
In front of me, in front of the truck,
I'm sorry?
in front of the truck.
And what were you able to see of the front lawn of the Albert residence that very first time you passed?
I was able to see the entire front lawn.
And about what time
Okay.
was it that you first passed 34 Fairview Road?
About 2:45.
Now, as you continued along past the driveway, did you continue to have all of those headlights on in front of you?
Yes.
And as you continued along, what were you able to see of that front lawn? How much of it?
A very large portion, almost to the front steps.
And now, when you're plowing, where is your attention focused, sir?
My attention's focused in front of me and then to the sides.
Why would your attention be focused to the sides?
I am trying to be aware of any side traffic, any pedestrians, and God forbid, any animals.
And when
I love that he said God forbid when it comes to the animals. I love him.
When
Love
did
him for
you
that.
pay to the sides of the road and the lawns that are adjacent to the road?
I'm, again, making sure that there are no animals, no pedestrians, and making sure no one's coming out of their driveways, not expecting to see me.
And with regard to exhibit 66, can you see the flagpole there?
Yes,
Is that something you had seen previously?
yes.
And when you made that first pass by that residence at 2:45 in the morning, sir, with your headlights on, what, if anything, did you see on the front lawn in the area of the flagpole?
I saw nothing.
If there had been a 6'2", 200-pound man lying in the snow there, would you have seen
Yeah.
it?
Objection.
Sustained.
Now, once you pass the residence, where do you go?
I go to the end of Fairview.
And what street does that intersect with?
That intersects with Chapman Street.
If we have the previous exhibit, put back up with the court's permission. Sure. Okay. Do you still have the exhibit oriented the same way, sir?
Yes, I do.
Where's Chapman Street on the exhibit? Down the bottom, the top, or which?
Down the bottom.
And when you come to the end of Fairview with Cedar Crest in your rear now, right?
Correct.
Do you take a left or a right on Chapman?
I take a left
All right.
onto
And
Chapman.
once you take that left, what do you do?
I back up and then take a left to go back down Fairview.
Okay, so you're essentially doing almost a three-point turn in the road?
Correct.
All right, so now, do you go back down Fairview at that time?
Yes, I do.
And how far do you go down Fairview?
To the end, to Cedar Crest.
Now, at this point in time, you would also pass the Albert residence, correct?
Correct.
Would it be on your right or your left?
On my left.
Were you looking to the right and the left as you were coming down?
Yes.
How much light did your headlights illuminate of the Albert's front lawn as you were coming down from Chapman Street?
coming down Chapman, just about the entire front lawn.
And again, with regard to that area around the flagpole, did you see anything on the lawn?
Nothing.
See a body?
No.
All right. Now, after you've done these 2 passes, sir, where do you go?
I then take a right on the Cedar Crest. I proceed up Spring Lane, come down Spring Lane, and then do the remaining of my route.
How long did it take you before you wound up back at Cedar Crest and Fairview?
About 45 minutes.
So I think you had previously testified you made the first pass around 2:45.
Correct.
So would that put us at about 3:30 when you're about to make the second pass?
Objection.
Sustained, ask it, Tiffany.
Sure, I'm sorry. What time was it, your best estimate in terms of when you would have approached Fairview and Cedar Crest again?
3:15 to 3:30.
All right. Now, when you approach that intersection again, are you approaching it such that Fairview would be on your left or your right this time?
On my left.
Same as last time.
Correct.
What do you do when you approach Cedar Crest? I'm sorry, when you approach Fairview
yeah,
and it's on your left?
That's a good question.
At
I
that
don't-
point, I
Candace is asking if the police interviewed him. I don't think they did. I believe that actually there were members of law enforcement, of which there's been so many, but that were asked on cross and if they interviewed him, and I believe they said they did not. Pretty sure. That wasn't from anybody recently. That was from like early on in the trial, but I'm pretty sure they did not interview.
you have an option. I can
Yeah.
go to the end of Cedar Crest, or I can turn around at a street, depending on how much snow I have on Fairview.
And with regard to the decision.
And here's the other
you
thing,
made
like,
that choice.
had they interviewed him and not like turned that over, I mean, this is exculpatory evidence from a witness. So, I don't know. It's so fishy, right? Like, I'm sure we'll find out. I mean, I'm sure they'll get to that, right? He'll probably ask him. Like, but of course, also the other thing we know is like the people that they interviewed, they didn't even interview all the people they needed to that were involved, right? Like there wasn't like a canvassing to try to get as much information as possible, right? Like, to our knowledge, they didn't even try to get video from the neighbors or talk to the neighbors. It's just like, yeah, I mean, if they actually wanted to solve it correctly, it would have been a very different process, right? I'm sure they would have found this guy. So
What decision did
Yeah.
you make on January 29th? at
Went
3:00?
all the way to the end.
fishy for
You all went
sure.
to the end of Cedar Crest.
Correct.
Same thing you did the first time.
Correct.
And then you come back up.
Correct.
Is Fairview on your right or your left at that time?
It would be on my right.
And did you take that right?
Yes, I did.
What, if anything, unusual did you see at that point?
At that point, I saw a Ford Edge on the side of the road
Where was it parked on the side of the road?
in front of the Albert's house,
Where in front of the Albert's house?
by the flagpole.
And why was that unusual?
The Alberts
Ford
never
Edge.
had cars that were parked out front, and it just stuck out as weird.
Interesting. All right. So let's think back to the Alberts' testimony. And I remember pointing this out when we watched these on the recaps, because there was talk about this Ford Edge from like opening statements. And I, of course, me not having read up on the trial, I didn't know anything about it. I just knew to listen up for it, right? And when they were questioning the Alberts, do y'all remember all the BS type of answers about their cars? Like when they were asked on direct or cross, like how many vehicles did you have? Where were they? And we know that there was a black Ford Edge that somebody in the family had, and they were all like, no one could say its whereabouts. And there was also funny stuff around the garage that I probably have time stamped from weeks and weeks ago, where it seemed like they wanted to make sure nobody used that second door closest to the garage. And I posited a theory early on that perhaps that black Ford Edge was in the garage, at least initially. And remember, there was also the testimony from Brian Albert Jr.'s friends, and they were asking, I think this was Sister Nagel, because she was drinking beer and not White Claw. And they asked her on cross if she, how they didn't run out of beer or whatever, right? And like, she was kind of cagey about it. And I think it's because they knew that the extra beer was in the garage, and they were kind of trying to ask her, this is my speculation, if she had any cause to go in the garage to get more beer, right? Because I think that what they were trying to get to was if anybody witnessed seeing that Ford Edge in the garage. We also know there was a bunch of funny stories about swapping around of the cars with Brian Higgins and whatnot. And but anyway, as far as the Ford Edge goes, I'm wondering if it got moved out front to try to obscure the body from passersby. Maybe, I don't know. Just a thought.
Now, what are snow conditions like at that point? This is now, I think you said about 3:15 to 3:30.
It's starting to accumulate a lot quicker than what it was previous.
And what policies does the DPW have regarding cars parked in the streets during a blizzard where there's plowing to be done?
We are to notify the supervisor. At that point, he will make a phone call to the police, and depending on if they can have the resident move it, it gets moved. If not, it gets towed.
Right.
With
So that's
regard to that
why.
policy,
Okay.
did you
This makes
comply with
sense.
that policy?
This makes sense. Hi, Fender. Glad you're here.
No, I did
This
not,
makes so much
Why?
sense.
because I was being courteous to the Albert family.
This makes sense because he can't plow if there's a vehicle there.
Once you
That makes
saw
sense.
the Ford
I
Edge-
actually, this reminds me, I will tell you guys a story. When I was living in Boone, which is a mountain town with tons of snow, y'all have heard about it probably by now. I actually used to have a BMW back in the day, and I lived all the way up a big, tall hill. I guess it was, depending on where you live, you might have called it more of a mountain, but basically there was a steep, curvy road to get to the house, my house, well, apartment. And, we got tons and tons and tons and tons of snow. So we had a huge snowstorm, right? And I'm driving up the road, and one vehicle after another they'd abandoned vehicles on the side of that road, including huge ass trucks, SUVs, cars with 4-wheel drive. And they were there were all these cars lined up on the side of the road, right? That people, because they didn't think they would make it. And so they locked their cars and left them there, people that lived on this road. So yes, I did fender. We did watch it. Oh, that's a bummer. Yeah. We started from the very beginning with Dr. Scordi-Bello. So, and Discord should have notified you. Shame on Discord if it fucked up. But anyway, so I eventually, my car seemed to be doing okay. But when I saw that there were so many trucks and SUVs that had parked their vehicles, I was like, okay, well, if the SUVs and the trucks are giving up, I'm not going to try to make it up the hill, the rest of the hill. I say hill, it really was more like a mountain in my BMW. So I parked my car just like all the other cars, right? Well, the next morning I make the trek down in like the blizzard conditions. It was pretty far actually to go get my car, and my car is gone and all of the cars are gone. And I was like, what? And I don't even know how I figured it out, because it's not like they had any way to contact the owners of the vehicles. They wouldn't know who they were. What I figured out was that the the city of, I guess technically that was Blowing Rock, but Boone, whatever, the city tows those vehicles because of the snow plows. And I had no idea this was a thing. So they tow it. They don't give you any notice because they can't. I mean, how are they going to know whose car belongs to who? They just tow those vehicles and they take them and they put them, I think, at the police department. And then they charge storage to keep them there. And then they charge you the fee for the tow truck. So by the time so it's just overnight, right? And I come to get my car, it's gone. I figure out that it's been towed. I call, and you'd pay, it was like hundreds of dollars to pay for like the storage and then like the tow truck and all this shit. But it was because they said like it's a violation, like we can't plow with cars there. And I was like, well, everybody parked their cars. And they're like, well, we towed everybody's. So anyway, I'd completely forgotten about that story until now. So I do know firsthand, like what he's saying actually matters, because had he reported that vehicle as being parked there, it would have been towed. And he was friends with the family. So it sounds like he did them a solid and didn't maybe report the car. We'll find out. I did say BMW. Yes, it was my dream car. I was in love with that car. It was my favorite thing ever. I freaking loved it. I don't care about cars except for BMWs. I love BMWs. It was a black 3 Series. It was amazing. It was awesome. Oh, I know. We listened to it a couple times because it was so great, that opening part. I know. And I was like yelling the whole time, like, yup, yup, yup. Right, exactly. Yeah, he did them a courtesy. So now what I don't know, I haven't even gotten to the part yet. I don't know if he saw a body or not, right? That'll be interesting. Because my thought was, did they park that Ford Edge out there to block any person from seeing the body? So we'll see.
Side of the road near that flagpole. What did you do?
It was beautiful.
I had to go around the vehicle and as to not hit the vehicle.
All right, and probably obvious, but as you're approaching the vehicle, was it faced in the same direction that you were traveling?
Yes,
And so you're going around to the left or the right of the vehicle?
left.
Yeah, Fender, since you missed it, so I was saying when it was Lally's turn to do his argument for the motion for directed verdict, and he was like, this whole case doesn't just hinge on Trooper Paul's testimony. And I'm like, I knew exactly where he was going with it. So I paused him and I was like, oh no, don't tell me. He's like, it hinges on like Trooper Paul's testimony and the testimony from all the other witnesses. And I'm like, that just makes it worse. Every single witness was terrible. Like you were better off just trying to say it was like blame it on Trooper Paul. But now you're like his testimony and all the testimony from everyone else. It's like, well, that's just worse. Like, what the hell? Like, let's throw in Trooper Proctor. Let's throw in Brian Higgins. Like, what the fuck?
On the right side of that vehicle, the lawn side.
Yes.
Did you see anything on the front lawn at that time?
Objection.
That's what I was.
I'll allow it. Did you see
Fucking hell.
anything?
No.
Okay.
Lights were still on.
Correct.
All right, now,
Interesting.
once you pass the vehicle, did anything attract your attention at all?
No.
All right. Where do you go?
I go up to the end of Fairview and do the same process. Take a left
So,
on this.
right. Okay.
Chapman
I
and-
think that where the defense might go with this is because this might be where it's actually, they could maybe even use it in closing arguments. I'm trying to see a path here where they could actually, if they're saying, okay, let's say the body's like, okay, time of death, right? Like maybe that's the angle they're going. Maybe they're thinking that there was not a body out there yet. Okay. Because he was still in the house or wherever in the basement, I guess they'd have to figure out the phone, right? Like maybe something happened to him, but he was still inside the house potentially. I don't know, but I guess what they could do is in closing arguments, they could actually use all those other terrible witnesses and actually try to say, well, blah, blah, blah. But you did hear every single witness, one after another, all say they didn't see a body out there. And their times varied, some left at 12:30, others said it was closer to 2, but nobody saw a body. And then you heard from Brian Loughran, and he's, what was it, 2:30 or 3 o'clock, I think, for him. And he didn't see a body. So like the idea being to be like, yeah, so it's consistent. Nobody saw a body. So it had to have been after that time, after 3 o'clock perhaps. And obviously Karen was nowhere around. So, all right. Yeah. Well,
Back down Chapman.
at
and
first
take a
I was
left
confused,
into
and then I was like,
Fairview
oh,
again.
you mean the witness does well, not
Once you come
Lally.
back down Fairview, do you pass the Albert residence again?
Correct.
Was there that car that you saw?
Correct.
It moved from when you passed it the first time.
No.
Were you able to see the front lawn of the Alberts in front of you as you were coming down Fairview toward the Cedar Crest?
Not as much as the first time because the car blocked the view.
All right. Now, after that, how long did it?
You
take
mean
before
Andrew did a motion that was different from what Jackson did? Is that what you're saying, Andrew? Of
to that area to plow again?
About
Right.
3 hours.
course.
Do you recall about what time it was that you wound up back on Fairview?
I don't honestly recall what specific time.
Sure. Approximately, if it was 3:15 to 3:30, that second time, what would be your best estimate of the time when you came back?
I would say if I had to say, it would have been 5:30 up Fairview, and came back down, and then at that point I wasn't able to go further than Carriage Lane.
Okay, and when you say that you went up Fairview and came back down, you initially went from which side of Fairview?
Right side.
What would that be, the right side? I'm sorry. Would it be the Cedar Crest side or the
It would have been Cedar Crest side.
coming from Cedar Crest, and then you went up Fairview, came back down?
Came back down. As I'm going up, I am actually seeing first responders. And at that point, as I'm coming back down, the road's blocked at that point.
Okay. And
Oh,
when the road was blocked,
cool.
what, if any,
That'd be
plowing
fun.
were you able
I wanna
to do
do
after
that.
that on Fairview?
I was able to go as far as Carriage Lane
She did not closing for the Commonwealth.
and then turn around.
Okay. And then I imagine it was several hours before you could plow again?
Before I could plow Fairview to the end of Cedar Crest, yes.
All right. Now, I'd like to direct your attention to February 15th of 2022. We were approached by an investigator who wanted to ask you questions about what you had seen and done
A defense
on January
investigator.
29th of
Here
2022.
you go.
Yes.
Here you go. Whoever was asking, I think it was Candace. And now we're going to get to it. My guess is he was never interviewed by law enforcement.
Remember his name?
Yes.
What is it?
Paul?
And what was your understanding about whom Paul worked for?
Objection.
Ask it differently.
Oh, most of the feds.
On February 15th of 2022, were you ever approached by anybody in law enforcement, sir?
No.
That's
So
it.
what was
There
your
you go.
understanding of
Official.
Paul's job?
Objection.
I'll see Councilor Tybar.
Okay, so it was somebody for the defense, just like I figured. Yep, the law enforcement didn't, because they didn't want to find out the truth. So as we were saying before, I had another thought. What was it? I lost my other thought. Forward here.
any point in 2022,
Ooh, look at
whoever
you. Hi. Very interesting.
You are unmuted.
just a couple questions, Mr. Loughran.
Sure.
At any point in 2022, were you ever approached by any police investigators, sir?
No.
When was the first time that you were approached by the state police in this case? Do you recall?
I don't recall the actual date,
I wonder how they even
but
got
I do know.
Year?
Yes.
What year was that?
2023.
And do you recall
after the defense
the
brought
name of the
their attention.
investigator that approached you?
Mike Proctor
Of course it was.
and Sergeant, and I can't pronounce his name. I don't want to.
I
Okay.
said Buchanan. Would that ring a bell?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
I have nothing further. Thank you, sir.
All righty.
Mr. Lally?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Lolly. I wonder if they're going to break for lunch after this.
Morning, sir.
Good morning.
May I approach?
Yes.
Already? What the hell, Lolly? Okay, dude. I have not been paying. Well, you mean like physically?
I'm showing you the document that's already been marked with Exhibit 109. Just ask you to look at that and look up whenever you're finished, okay?
Yes.
You recognize that, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
These are the plow routes for the town of Canton.
And there's different numbers that are associated with different routes and different drivers assigned to those routes. Is that right?
Yes.
And if you look down at number 11, is that your route that you were talking about as far as the sort of portion of Cedar Crest neighborhood that you plow?
Yes.
And that's the route that you were assigned to on January 28th and January 29th of 2022, correct?
Yes.
Now, if I could ask, just as far as there's a certain way that you plow a route. Yeah. Excuse me. There's a certain way that you plow a road, correct?
Correct.
And when you're first plowing the road, you're sort of plowing the middle of the road, correct?
Correct.
And you do it in sort of a fashion that's referred to as ring road right. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury what that is and sort of why you're plowing a road in that particular fashion when you're first starting to get out there with the plow?
So ring road to the right refers to the snow coming off the plow. It actually leaves a row of snow. We ring road to the right to prevent cars from having to go through the ring road to the left. If you go to the left, you've now put the ring road in the middle of the left-hand lane. So everything's to the right.
So everything's to the right because if there was a vehicle coming the other way, you'd be plowing into that vehicle. Is that correct?
Correct.
And your goal, sort of, when you're first getting out there to plow the roads, is to sort of clear the middle of the roadway first, correct?
Correct.
So that's where your truck is when you first go out and plow the road, is you're sort of in the middle of the road near the double yellow line, if there is one on that road.
Correct.
Okay. Now, this truck that you were driving, on that day, how long have you been assigned to that truck for plowing purposes?
I was assigned to that truck for probably 2 years.
I think
Maybe
it's on
longer.
one time. I
Were you
think.
driving that same truck in 2015?
Oh, no, it's
No.
not.
Okay, so you're driving a different truck at that point?
Correct.
Do you remember what kind of truck
It
that was?
sounded like it was on
It
the.
was an F550 utility truck, pickup
That's
truck.
Similar in size or shape to the truck that you were driving that day?
No.
Now, you were asked some questions about February 15th, 2022, when you spoke to some investigator on that day, correct?
February 15th?
Yes, 2022. That Paul person you were talking
Yes.
about. Okay. And you met him at a skating rink.
I know, right? That's it.
Correct.
That's what it is.
And you said in a statement to him at that time that you would have seen a body on the front lawn or the sidewalk. Is that right?
Correct.
Now, are you aware that there is no sidewalk on the same side of the street as 34 Fairview Road?
So, oh my God.
Correct.
Now, you mentioned some familiarity with the Alberts and with the Albert resident. Are there other people on that route that you're familiar with as far as where they live and who they are and all that?
Yes.
And how are you equally familiar with them, more familiar with them, or less familiar with them?
Equally.
Equally? Now, familiarity with 34 Fairview Road, does that extend to sort of the lighting around that area?
No,
So do you know that there is actually no street lighting whatsoever in the area of the fire hydrant or the flagpole?
You didn't
or
see
anywhere
there
there
was. You
for
said his
several
car
hundred
had
feet?
all the lights, dude.
correct.
Fucking
So
hell.
you do know.
Lally, you're an idiot.
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
He's like, your question makes no
And
sense.
so when you're driving by, you're looking for cars coming out of the driveway, cars coming in the opposite direction, people walking, is that correct?
Correct.
And you're trying to look for those objects so that you make sure that you don't strike them or hit them or anything like that, correct?
Correct.
He ran over Lally with a snowplow. Sorry, I had to. I can't take it anymore. Guys.
And on February 15th, 2022, when you had this meeting with Paul, you told him about 3:30 or 4 a.m. Is when you saw this Ford Edge on Cedar Crest, correct?
Correct.
Now, in fact, when you first spoke to this individual named Paul, you didn't tell him it was a Ford Edge, correct?
Nope. Told him it was a Ford Edge.
You didn't tell him first that it was a small SUV?
Nope. Told him it was a Ford Edge.
You remember at any time Paul taking you on the parking lot and showing you different vehicles and asking you if those vehicles matched what vehicle you saw?
No. He wanted to make sure that what I was telling him
Lally.
was accurate. So he showed me what was a Ford Edge.
Wow.
But I had already told him
Wow.
it was a Ford Edge.
So he brought you out to the parking lot at the skating rink that you were
It's so
meeting.
refreshing, isn't it?
Specifically showed you a Ford Edge and asked you if that was the vehicle.
Correct.
Now, do you know sort of the difference between if you were to see a Ford Edge at nighttime in a
Ollie?
snowstorm, the difference between a Ford Edge and a Jeep Cherokee?
Yes.
What's the difference?
The taillights in the back.
Wow.
What about it?
Wow.
Ford Edge is a more round.
Wow.
The
Holy
whole back facade is a little bit more round.
Wow.
A Jeep Cherokee are more square.
Now, what color was this SUV that you saw?
Lally.
I can't tell you that. I am colorblind.
Can you tell, I'm just curious, sir, as far as your color blindness, can you tell whether or not an object is dark or light just by looking at it? Or you
I
can't
can
tell at all?
I can see things that are light. I can see things that are dark. I can see true colors. I can't see shades of true colors.
And so from what you saw, was this light or dark?
Light.
Now,
Like the
you
color of
told,
SUV was lit.
this Paul individual on February 15th that the SUV that you saw was exactly where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found, correct?
Correct.
How do you know where his body was found?
I told him specifically if he was looking at the door, the front door, it was about 3 feet to the left of the door. And with
To the left of the door?
looking at the front of the door to the left of the door, pushing it up Fairview.
So if he wrote in his report that you told him that the vehicle was exactly where the body was found, that would not be true?
Objection.
No, I'll allow that.
Could you repeat that question, please?
If he wrote in his report that you told him that the SUV was exactly where the body was found, that would not be true, would it not?
That would be true. The car was to the left of the door, putting it in front of the flagpole.
My question for you, sir, is how do you know where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found? At any point in time, did you see
Catherine
Mr.
about the
O'Keefe's body
car.
on
Oh my
sunlight?
God.
No.
Lally.
So how do you know where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found?
Through police reports, police interviews, stuff that was posted on the media.
So you've seen police reports in the media?
Well, not
correct?
the police reports, I'm sorry, but what was said during on the news.
Yeah.
So what you've heard on the news, not necessarily what you saw or what you know yourself, correct?
Here's the thing. Does Wally really want to go down that road when none of the law enforcement actually saw the body and no one measured it and no one actually knows where the body is? This dude knows as well as anybody that he's called as a witness.
Could you repeat that question, please?
You're recounting
I know,
sort
right,
of what you've
Candace?
heard or saw on the news, and so this
Insane.
doesn't come from your personal knowledge or anything about where
Wally,
Mr.
really
O'Keefe was,
Correct.
Oh my God. The jury's
Now, you also spoke with some other individuals in May of 2023, correct?
Correct.
Now, did you tell those individuals that you actually came in? And when you say came in, you come into sort of the main sort of hub or the shed on Boulevard Street, correct?
Correct. We punch in.
That's where you punch in and you pick up your truck and you sort of do your checkpoint around the truck and then you go out and plow.
Correct.
Now, you were plowing on this street. Was there any other sort of subcontractor or anything else that was working plowing the roads as well?
Yes.
And who was that?
It was by the yard landscaping.
And so they assist as far as the plow route is concerned, and they go around and they plow things on the same route that you were describing, correct?
Correct.
Now, these other people that you talked to in May of 2023, did you tell them at that time that you actually came in around 11:30 p.m. to 12 a.m.?
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that, or you didn't tell them?
I don't remember that.
That would be a significant difference, 11:30 p.m. to 12 a.m. from 2:15 a.m. and 2:30 a.m., correct?
Correct.
He's like, yeah, that's different.
Now, you also indicated to them at that time that you went past Fairview at approximately 12 a.m. and 2 a.m., correct?
I never did 12, but it was definitely 2:30,
So if they wrote
2:40,
that in a report,
2:35.
that would be inaccurate as well, correct?
Sustained, and only one person can talk at a time.
I apologize. I'm sorry, sir. Please continue and finish your answer.
I didn't hear the question.
Okay. Well, let me ask it again. So as far as if that was contained within a report regarding that conversation in May of 2023, that you went past Fairview Road or went down Fairview Road at 12 a.m. and 2 a.m., that would not be accurate, correct?
Sustained, ask it differently.
Did you go down Fairview Road at 12 a.m. and 2 a.m.?
No.
If that were contained in a report of your conversation you had in May of 2023, would that be accurate?
Sustained, ask it differently, Mr. Lally.
Now, as far as that conversation that you had in May of
You just
2023,
gave up, I guess?
did you tell
Hilarious.
those individuals that you saw them
Yeah,
around
that's a good
1:30
idea,
or
Lally.
2 in the morning?
Again, I don't remember ever saying that.
Is that accurate as far as whether or not you told them that?
Lolly,
Again, I don't remember saying that.
asked and answered.
Did you see a vehicle around 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning?
I wasn't on the road at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in
Well
the
done,
morning.
sir.
Now, do you also recall telling
Yes,
those
indeed.
individuals that Fairview Road was blocked off by cruisers at about 3 or 3:30 in the morning?
Again, that would have been
Impossible.
incorrect.
Yes. Yes.
Do you recall saying that in May of 2023?
I do not.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes. Show counsel. Thank you.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to read, showing you a document. I'm going to ask you to read this paragraph, and this paragraph to yourself, okay? And then whenever you're done, just please look at it, right?
I guess Lolly's going to try to impeach him. See how that goes. Well, it sounds like the statement is from somebody else, though.
Are you finished, sir?
Yes.
Okay. May I approach this retrieve? now?
Yes.
Mr. Loughran, after having reviewed that as your memory refreshed as to that conversation you had in May of 2023,
No, it does not.
Ha, nice.
you still, after reading that, don't recall telling anybody in May of 2023 that you came in around 11:30 p.m., 12 a.m. on the 28th, 29th?
I never came in at 11:30,
Wow.
12:30 at night. It was 2:30 calling.
Wow.
You don't recall indicating to anyone in May of 2023 that you went past Fairview at 12 a.m. and 2 a.m.?
Correct. Never did.
And you don't recall
Wally,
telling
it's
anyone
asked
that you
and
saw the
answered.
car around 1:30 or 2 a.m.? Is that correct?
Correct.
And you don't recall telling anybody that the part of Fairview containing 34 Fairview was blocked off at 3 or 3:30 a.m., correct?
Correct.
Now, if the part of
Oh,
Fairview
boy.
that you were talking about, you didn't say that in May of 2023, because at 3 or 3:30, the roadway wasn't blocked off, correct?
Correct.
It was blocked off sometime around 6 a.m., correct?
Correct.
And so if you had said that the roadway was blocked off at 3 or 3:30 in the morning, and it was actually 6, then when you saw the vehicle, it would have been off a little bit as well, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Seeing the car at 1:32 in the morning, with the road being blocked off at 3 or 3:30 in the morning.
Blocked
If the road's
off?
blocked off at 6 a.m., then that actually would have been, you saw a car sometime around 5 a.m., correct?
Oh my God, Wally,
Sure you
stop
didn't see a
it.
black Lexus
Give up,
SUV in
man.
front of the house at 34 Fairview Road around 5 a.m.?
No.
Now, you also were asked some questions and you spoke to some troopers in August of 2023, correct?
Correct.
And County Canton, they have a parking ban in Canton, is that correct?
Correct.
That goes from November until April.
Correct.
Now, part of your plow route is a road called Tippy Cart, correct?
Correct.
Where is Tippy Cart in relation to Fairview?
Tippy cart?
It is on top of the, it's on the right side of Cedar Crest. It would put it 2 streets before Fairview.
And at some point, when you were plowing on Tippy Cart that night, you actually hit a basketball hoop, is that right?
Yes.
And did you call that in?
Yes.
Wow.
And as a result of that, what happened with the basketball hoop after that?
Nothing. The point was to make sure I was covered, basically. It's why I notified my supervisor that I hit the basketball hoop.
And about what time was that you hit the basketball hoop?
I don't recall.
Is it closer to when you started, closer to when you ended?
I don't recall. I don't recall what time.
So you don't recall anything specific about that time, correct?
No, just that I know I hit the basketball net.
And obviously, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth or anything, sir, but you didn't intentionally hit the basketball hoop, correct?
Correct.
So you hit it because you didn't see it, correct?
No, I was attempting to avoid the net by going around it. And the machine had a different size body than what it originally had. And I underestimated when I was going around that I need to be wider.
So you misjudged the distance. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Wow, Lally, great. Excellent. Can you sit down now, please? God. I know, right, Fender? It's just.
Very approach on.
Okay, we'll go forward. We're still approaching. It's a long one.
Now, sir, at some point prior to coming in here and testifying today, have you met with Mr. Yannetti?
Yes.
How many times?
Twice.
And when were those times?
Tuesday and Saturday.
Tuesday and Saturday. When, sir?
Tuesday of last week, Saturday of last week.
Wow.
And this Paul person that you spoke of before, was that person present there as well?
Yes.
And did you make note of Paul writing anything down or Mr. Yannetti writing anything down while you were talking to them?
No.
And as far as you're aware, there's no reports that were generated from any of those conversations or any of those meetings, is that correct?
Correct.
Sit down.
So, sir, I'm correct if I say that you're sure about every time that you went down Fairview
Oh my
Road,
God,
and
the
everything that
tone
you
on that.
saw going down Fairview Road, but you're completely unaware of the time that you ran into and struck a basketball hoop that night. Is that correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Argumentative as fuck.
You're sure about all the times that you went down Fairview Road?
Yes.
Wow.
And you have no idea what time that you went on Tippy Cart and you struck the basketball hoop. Is that right?
If you ask me to guess, I can guess for you.
I'm not asking you to guess, sir. I'm asking you to know.
I don't recall exactly what time I hit that net.
Nothing further.
Right. Anything, Ms. Giannetti?
Briefly, there's just one question I wanted to make sure that we understand what's going on.
So no statements, right? Just ask a question.
I always do that. I apologize, Your
Okay.
Honor. You were asked a question by Mr. Lally. Are you sure you didn't see a black Lexus at around 5 a.m. in front of Fairview? And your answer was no. And my question to you is, does that mean that you're not sure if you saw one or that you didn't see one?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
Yeah.
I did not see a Lexus at 5 a.m.
At any point that night while you were plowing,
No,
you see a black Lexus in front of 34 Fairview?
no.
Thank you, sir.
Yay!
Very briefly, based on your timeline, were you on Fairview Road at 5 a.m.?
Yes.
How so, sir?
It was about 3 hours after the last time I went on it. So it put me, I was last on it at about 3:45, about 5:30.
You were on the road about 2:45, and you said it took you about 45 minutes to sort of do the loop and come back, correct?
Correct.
And from the time that you were on there, including the time that it took you to plow and the time that it took you to do all of those things along the route, you're
It's
coming
just plow.
back to
That's all he
Fairview
has
Road
to do.
45 minutes later, or it took you 45 minutes to do the route?
It was about 45 minutes.
And so from there, 45 minutes, from what time are we talking that you were first there? Said about 2:45 or so?
About 3:30 with some.
About 3:30, okay.
Yeah.
So about 3 hours after that would then be about 6:30, correct?
It was about. I mean, I know I went up there and saw the first responders coming down.
I understand.
And when
What I'm asking is, you would testify that you may or you were on Fairview Road around 5 a.m. If you're not returning for 3 hours later, and that's about 6:30 from 3:30, correct?
Correct.
So then you were not on Fairview Road at 5 a.m., correct?
I was. The time that it took me to do what I needed to do put me there about 5. So when I'm coming down Cedar Crest from doing my route, I am constantly looking at Fairview to make sure that it's considered a main road. So we need to take that as a priority. So if it's a lot of snow on that road, I am going to go turn around and do the road so that the road is available. So first responders have access to that road.
So what I'm saying is, you testified, your timeline, that you
Yep.
came down there around 6:30 in the morning, correct?
My timeline was 5:30.
At 3
5:30?
hours after 3:30.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
It was 45 minutes.
No, 45 minutes was from 2:45 to get you to 3:30. Then 3 hours later, it's 6:30,
It was
correct?
It was about 45 minutes because I didn't get a lot of time. At that time, the snow was coming down
Oh, boy.
at a significant rate, and I needed to make sure Fairview was kept clear. So I come down and I check. So I have the streets are all around Fairview. They're 5-10 minutes around Fairview. So the furthest street from Fairview is Kings Road.
So my question is, sir, are you talking about coming down Fairview, or are you talking about being on
What do you
another
do?
road?
This is insane how much longer he's on.
Coming down
Yeah,
Cedar
I'm
Crest,
glad you're here.
looking
I need
at
to update my
Fairview.
banner. This is,
Like
I'm
that
so,
timeline that you gave her.
Ugh.
I
Infuriating.
am always looking at that street.
This is infuriating, dude.
All right, Mr. Loughran, you are all
Oh.
set, sir.
He's finished. Thank God. You're free. Free.
Ask Dr. Marie Russell to join us.
Okay.
Oh my God. Holy shit, you got Woo! Finally, competency. Excellente. Let's edit the banner. So that is this is witness number 70. All right. Cool. Oops, wrong one.
All right, whenever you're ready, Mr.
The
Jackson.
expert
Thank you.
about the
Dr.
dog.
Russell,
Dog
could you
marks.
please in a loud, clear voice, state your name and spell
Right.
your last name, of course.
Hi, Dr. Marie Russell, Russell.
Doctor, what do you do for a living?
I'm an emergency room forensic pathologist, just recently retired.
And prior to your retirement, what was your position?
The immediate position before retirement was chief medical executive at the for the state of California at the Corcoran State Prison.
And
So, Dr. Russell, I'm going to ask you to keep your voice up, okay?
Yes.
Dude, she's awesome, Candace. You're gonna get to hear her. Rather than me telling you, let's listen to her tell you how awesome she is.
All right.
Thank you.
There's a couple of air conditioners in here. Just keep your voice as loud as possible. What is, in fact,
Also-
an emergency physician?
I will just briefly say, remember the Commonwealth's motion that they did? Part of that, the main part of that was to try to exclude her testimony because she's bad for them.
An emergency physician is a medical specialist who has completed a residency, internship residency in the field of emergency medicine, which is a field which
In here.
involves taking care of
Ooh.
patients that are sick or injured
Okay, so you saw
and go
her.
to the emergency room.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what your education, starting with your education, training, and background is that qualifies you as an emergency physician, starting with your education all the way back to college?
Okay.
Accurate.
Well, I've completed at least 16 years of formal education beyond high school, which includes college, and then 4 years of medical school, then 4 years of emergency medicine residency and internship, and then 4 years of pathology residency, which includes 2 years anatomic and 2 years of forensic pathology. And then I treated, I've taken a bunch of other courses and attended seminars.
Let's start with your college. Where'd you go to college? Where'd you start?
MIT, I did my first year at MIT where I took my pre-med courses.
And then what happened after that? By the way, about what year was that?
Oh, that was in 1972 to 73.
Where did you go after MIT?
So what happened? I was interested in becoming a doctor, and so I took the pre-med courses, and then subsequent to that first year, I learned that my mother had metastatic breast cancer, and so I decided to go home to New York to be with her. After that, she subsequently passed away, and I returned to Massachusetts and decided to take advantage of the time off from school to investigate my interest in law enforcement. And I subsequently became a police officer here in Massachusetts.
So following MIT, did you go to a police academy?
I did.
Which police academy did you go to?
I went to the Boston Police Academy.
And did you end up becoming a sworn officer?
Yes,
For how long?
I did it for 7 years full time.
And what department did you work for?
I worked for the City of Malden Police Department.
What years was that, if you could give me a range?
From 1977 to 1984.
During the time that you were a Malden police officer, did you also go to school and continue your formal education?
I did.
Describe that for us, please.
Well, I took specialized courses through the Massachusetts Criminal Justice Training Council.
Objection, move to strike.
All right, so I'm going to strike that. Jurors, disregard that.
Let me ask you this way. I don't want to get into the specifics.
Okay.
While you were a police officer, did you also take formal education to further your medical training or your college?
Yes, I did.
That's what I'm interested in.
Okay.
Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. So I attended Northeastern University part-time and received a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology.
After you got
remember
your
that
degree
being
in
part of
psychology
the
from
ruling.
Northeastern, did you go on to continue your education?
I don't remember that being part of like an off limits thing from the ruling on the motion. You can do Nightbot things. However, oh, you mean add a command? I have to add the command if that's what you mean, Fender. I have to add the command. The commands are available, but you know that, right? But yeah, so imagine being a female cop though for that police department back when she was there. Like that is insane. But yeah, I'm just curious why that was. Or did they say? I mean, the ruling was she couldn't testify about injuries sustained like in a car accident or whatever. So I don't know what the deal was, but they must have also said she can't talk about being in law enforcement. I guess kind of makes sense.
I did. I attended medical school
I mean,
at
it's
the
not bad
University
now.
of Massachusetts Medical School from 1983 to 1987.
Also known as UMass.
Yes,
Did you ultimately end up with a medical degree?
did.
After
Doctor,
you became a doctor, did you engage in a residency?
yes.
What years were the residency, that first residency?
So the first residency was from 1987 to 1991, and that was in Los Angeles at the Los Angeles County University of Southern California Medical Center.
Is that also known as LAUSC?
It was at the time, yes.
And that's associated with the University of Southern California Medical Center, is that right?
Yes.
After your first residency, by the way, what was your first residency in? What was the subspecialty?
So it was in emergency medicine, and USC is a very large trauma center.
How would you describe the size and volume of the USC Trauma Center?
Well, it's one of the busiest in the United States.
After your first residency in emergency medicine, did you do a second residency?
Yes.
What was the subspecialty in that second residency?
So I did a 2 years in anatomic pathology and 2 years as a fellow in forensic pathology at the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office.
So you did 2 full residencies after you became a doctor, is that right?
That is correct.
What's the difference? I don't want to go into great detail, but what's the difference between an emergency physician and, for instance, the residency that you did in pathology, both anatomic pathology and forensic pathology? What are the differences?
Well, generally, the emergency physician treats live patients, and the spectrum of injuries can be wide, or illnesses can be wide, and the forensic pathologist treats or deals with deceased patients generally.
Did you become a fellow at the LA Coroner's Office following your second residency?
No, that was part of the second residency.
Understood. Describe that fellowship.
So that was 2 years of full-time work at the LA Coroner's Office under the supervision of very experienced medical examiners. And what I did was I did autopsies, every day, 1 or 2 autopsies every day, attended conferences, and read journal articles, etc. It was a very formalized education.
Did you also become at some point a professor or an assistant professor at LAUSC, the medical center side, the university side?
Yes. So while I was doing the forensic pathology and anatomic pathology residencies during the daytime, I worked as a full-time ER doc supervisor in the capacity of an assistant professor in the evenings.
Did you also become an adjunct professor at California State Los Angeles?
Yes.
Is that a separate university?
Yes.
And you had separate responsibilities as a professor in that role?
Yes.
Were you also teaching legal medicine and forensic medicine in that capacity?
That is correct. It was a master's level program.
How long were you an ER physician in total and an attending physician for Los Angeles County USC Medical Center?
29 years in total. 4 of those were in training and the rest were as a supervisor. And
Of your 29 years, 25 of your 29 years, you were supervising others,
correct.
meaning other doctors,
Other doctors, yes.
teaching other doctors,
Yes.
and teaching medical students.
Yes, and seeing their cases. Once they examined the patient, they would present their case or tell me about the case, and then I would go in and see those patients in addition to my patients.
That was my next question, doctor. In addition to teaching, were you also specifically assessing, diagnosing, and treating patients of your own?
Yes, not all the time. Some shifts I didn't have to do that, but much of the time, yes.
For the bulk of the 29 years that you were an ER doc, an emergency physician, in other words, were you also attending to patients as well?
Yes.
Once you left that fellowship with the LA Coroner's Office, did you remain active in any way or connected to the Los Angeles Coroner's Office?
Yes, so I would attend their weekly conferences when I could, when I was available to do so. And I also consulted on some cases with them. So if they had something that was interesting and beyond their clinical expertise, they would sometimes consult me.
During your tenure at LAUSC, did you become the director of any of their sub-programs?
Yes.
Can you describe that for the jurors, please?
Yes, I was director of the USC Center for Life Support Training. So, that involved teaching other doctors life support courses such as advanced cardiac life support, or that we teach the surgeons advanced trauma life support.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Were you also a director for their quality improvement in the early 2000s?
Yes, for the emergency medicine department.
What was the reason for the quality improvement program, if you will, for LAUSC?
Well, for any program, it's ideal to have a quality improvement component, because what you want to do is look at cases that were treated and see if there were any errors, and if so, correct the errors, teach the doctors that involved, what went wrong, and try to make systemic improvements or teaching improvements to prevent those errors from occurring in the future.
Were you teaching basically best practices for emergency room physicians as well as trauma physicians and surgeons?
Yes, we tried.
And you were the director of that program, correct?
Yes.
Did you also become the director of LAUSC Jail Medical Services?
Yes.
What is the connection or the tether between the jail system in Los Angeles and LAUSC Medical Center?
Well, LAC Jail Ward was established about 70 years ago, and it was a place that the officers from various agencies, such as LA Sheriffs, LAPD, California Highway Patrol, or any of the municipalities around, could bring people that they arrested who were in need of medical care.
So the jail system, very large jail system, I'm guessing, in Los Angeles, correct?
Correct, yes.
There have to be medical attendants to that jail system, correct? Yes. And you became the director of the jail medical services for the entirety of that system?
For the hospital component of it.
Understood. In California, you're obviously licensed in California.
Yes.
There is a state medical board in California, correct?
Yes.
And did you ever do any work with that state medical board?
Yes, I worked with them for about 7 years part-time as a regular employee embedded in their enforcement unit. And what that involved was examining cases that were referred to the medical board because of substandard care or illegal activities of the providers. It was for physicians and physician assistants that we regulated.
What was your title with the state medical board for those purposes?
The title was medical consultant. That was the official title.
Okay. And then before your retirement, by the way, what years were you the medical consultant for, or a medical consultant for the state board in California?
Gee, I think from 2009 to 2016. I think those were the years. I'm not positive. I did that. That was a job I was doing when I was doing the LA County USC Medical Center job too. It was an extra job.
So you didn't stop working as a physician, an emergency physician at LAUSC to take that position?
No.
You just consulted with them?
I did it once a week, 1 day a week.
Got it. And then with regard to one of your last positions that you held, did you become the chief medical executive of the California State Prison, Corcoran?
Yes.
Tell me about that position and the years that you held that position.
So that was from 2018 to 2023. And as the chief medical executive, I was the supervisor of all the doctors and nurse practitioners that provided care to the inmates.
And obviously the California prison system is a very large prison system.
Very.
Doctor, are you board certified in emergency medicine?
Yes.
Are you a member of the National Association of Medical Examiners?
Yes, I'm actually fellow status, which is higher than member.
Are you a member of the American Academy of Forensic Science?
Yes, again, I'm a fellow there.
Which also is an advancement above just being a member?
Correct.
Have you ever published in the area, and now I'm going to get very specific, have you ever published peer-reviewed articles and done research in the area of animal bites and scratches?
Yes.
Did you author or co-author a peer-reviewed article named Managing Law Enforcement Dog Bites in the ER?
Yes.
About what year was that?
It was in the 1990s.
Late 1990s, 1996, does that
Yes.
sound right? Did you also author or co-author an article called
Are they going to Fender versus expert finally for the first person? Yes. Sorry, Fender. I had to let Fred outside. I can do this for you. Yes. Can I make a cross goat that just says Lally? Yes, I can. I will do it. Coming right up. Oops.
Yes.
So given those articles, did you study specifically dog bites, dog wounds on the human body?
Yes, I have a very strong interest in wounds in general, and I have a strong interest in dog bites in particular.
During the course of your career, your professional experience, how many patients would you say you've seen or treated with animal injuries, including bites and scratches?
It's very hard to estimate, but between my own practice and the residents that I supervised, it was, I'm sure, well over 500, and could possibly be double that.
Could be up as many as 1,000.
It could be, yes.
Have you qualified as an expert in emergency medicine?
Such a great point, Ben.
Yes,
You qualified as an expert in the area of
Great
forensic
point.
pathology and wounds in the past.
yes,
Is that both in federal and state courts?
yes.
Doctor, were you asked to review certain materials related to this case in furtherance of coming to some opinions and conclusions about injuries suffered by John O'Keefe specific to his right arm?
Yes.
What did you review in coming to your opinions and conclusions?
Well, I reviewed hospital records and pictures taken of him in the hospital, when he was in the hospital. I reviewed autopsy records, the autopsy report, and photographs taken during and before the autopsy. I reviewed, let's see, I reviewed reviewed the grand jury testimony of the autopsy pathologist. I reviewed affidavit of Dr. Sheridan. I reviewed the town of Canton dog bite reports about regarding incidents.
Section, may we approach?
Yes.
I don't know why Lally's got his panties in a wad, but oh, they take a break. Holy shit. Are they breaking for lunch? No, they're not. Okay, just kidding. Hold on. They're taking a break.
So the Commonwealth's objection is overruled. You can continue.
Doctor, you've listed several items that you've reviewed in coming to your opinions and conclusions. Did you also review a toxicological report
Yes,
and a neurology report, neuropathology report?
yes,
As well from the Commonwealth.
yes.
Based on your review of all of those materials, I don't want to know what your opinion or conclusion is yet, but were you able to come to an opinion or conclusion concerning the injuries specifically to John O'Keefe's arm,
Yes,
or his right arm? Were there any documents in furtherance of your review from UC Davis?
yes,
Did you review those as well?
Objection.
Sustained.
With court's permission, may we display exhibit 19, please?
Okay.
Doctor, I want to show you a photograph and ask you very quickly, have you seen this before?
yes,
Is this one of a number of photographs that you reviewed in furtherance of your evaluation of this case?
yes, it is.
I'd like to just focus your attention on this for just a quick second and ask you, does this accurately reflect the wounds or injuries that you saw on John O'Keefe's right arm in coming to your opinions and conclusions?
Yes, it reflects the injuries that I saw in photographs.
All right. Now, based on your review of all of the data that you've talked about, all of the information that you were given and reviewed, what is your opinion or conclusion about how these injuries were sustained?
I believe that these injuries were sustained by an animal, possibly a large dog, because of the pattern of the injuries.
Could you describe for the jurors, please, on what you base that opinion?
Yes. Well, may I use the?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. There's a number of patterns here. There on the upper part of the arm, there's parallel lines, and those were inflicted by either teeth or claw marks. So there's a number of patterns that could be teeth or claw mark. And so this is one set right here. This is the one further down, closer to the elbow, is another set of parallel marks. Again, probably most likely from teeth marks. And the reason I say that is, in addition to the parallel marks up here, down here, there's also little punctate, incomplete puncture marks here. Little round marks right there that were inflicted by the actual point of the tooth.
Okay, that was my question. What relevance does that have to your determination that this was likely caused by an animal?
Yes, and I can explain in a moment the various kinds of wounds that animals can inflict. But going on with the picture first. So then down right at the elbow, there's another different series of marks that again have linear abrasions up where the pointer is, and then down below some punctate, superficial, round, small abrasions, again representing upper and lower teeth, in my opinion. And then there are some irregular wounds down just below the elbow. And these are all, by the way, on the exterior surface, or what we call what doctors would call the posterior surface of the arm, which is the part of the arm that would sustain defensive type wounds. So if someone were to protect themselves.
Objection.
So sustain. Next question.
Sure. Doctor, if I can ask another question. Just to clear up what you said a little earlier about some of the wounds close to the elbow, is it your opinion that both the top teeth and the bottom teeth could have created some or all of the injuries on that elbow area?
Yes.
Okay, so in other words, instead of the mouth going all the way around the arm, it could have, the top and bottom jaw could have situated itself on this portion that we're seeing, the posterior part of the arm?
Yes. And in this case, the animal did not get a good enough contact.
Objection. Move to strike.
Why?
So I'm going to strike that, ask a different question.
Why?
Have you
She's
seen
allowed to-
contact?
I think that if she's nervous at all, it's because of these restrictions. I'm making your command right now, Thunder. Hold on.
Yes.
Okay,
Or
is that
making me
this or
log back
something
in.
else?
Something else.
Describe that.
Well, an animal inflicts injuries. The type of injury depends in part on the actual type of contact and how much force is applied by that animal, in addition to any relative movement between the animal and the victim in this case. So, for instance, in the law enforcement dog bites,
Fender in that?
many of
Objection.
So the nature, is it notice? Is it, what's one word?
I have an idea.
May
I
we
have an
approach?
idea.
Okay.
Oh my God. I have an idea. I'm going to try something. You can tell me if you don't like it, but I'm going to try something as a surprise, Fender. Let me go forward while they approach. Oh,
May we approach?
Okay.
Animal or large dog.
okay. Let's hear this part and then they approach again. So, let me know, Fender, what you think about this command. It's going to be exclamation point cross.
You are unmuted.
Exclamation point cross.
May I, Your Honor? Yes. Thank you. Without getting any specifics about police canines,
Okay.
does the pattern of injuries that you see appear consistent with an animal or a large dog?
yes.
Does the
Right.
number of injuries that you see here
Right. So what had happened was they had sent her that, but she hadn't reviewed it, and I guess they wanted her to review it, but she hadn't. So since voir dire, she could have looked. Yeah. Is that what you're thinking? Is that what you were saying?
related to
I know
just
you've
the
seen
right
this
arm? Is
already.
that also consistent with an animal or large dog?
Yes, it can be.
Is the direction of the injuries or the consistency of
I added
direction of
the
injuries
bird and the
parallel injuries,
goat.
Is that also consistent with an animal or large dog
Because of
attack?
that.
Yes.
Based on everything that we've discussed today, Doctor,
I'm pausing it real quick just to say, for anyone who didn't see it yet, there's a new emoji in the Discord for the Lally bird.
is it your opinion, based on a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that these injuries
Yay.
were from an animal attack, possibly a large dog?
Yes.
Beautiful.
Can I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Well said. Credible.
Okay.
May
Wow.
we approach?
Okay.
So wait, so that was it for direct? That's wild. So Lally cross. God damn it. I just Lally. Ugh.
May we approach?
Okay.
Muted.
Where we just were. Fucking hell. Lally. I know. Ugh.
Good job.
Sure.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir.
Now,
Do I? Okay.
Testified that you're
Yeah, I'm
certified
gonna
in
put
emergency
you-
medicine, is that correct?
That is correct.
And you're not, nor were you ever certified in forensic medicine, is that correct?
That is correct.
I know.
Correct.
I
When
know.
was the last time that you worked at a coroner's office?
1995 in terms of doing autopsies. Yes.
Yep.
Now, when was it that you first spoke to anyone from defense counsel in regard to your coming in here and testifying today?
May 17th.
Doctor, I am going to ask you to keep your voice up.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
May 17th, 2024.
May 17th of this year, is that right?
2024.
So about 6 weeks after this trial began?
I don't know when the trial began.
Sweet.
Now, as far as who reached out to who?
I reached out to a district attorney that I worked with in with the LA
You know
Coroner's
what's
Office.
so funny about this?
And then somehow that person put you.
There is nothing he can do to make her seem like she's even 0.00002% as biased as any of the Commonwealth's witnesses. He could lie, he could do whatever. There's nothing he can do to make her seem like, if he's trying to act like there's some sort of conflict or bias, you've got to be joking me. There's no way, right? There's no way is he
Jackson,
going
is
to
that right?
try?
Yes.
Don't
And
try.
was that also on May 17th?
17th and 18th, yes.
So I'm sorry, 17th or the 18th? Which one was it that you spoke with Mr. Jackson?
I didn't speak to him.
You did not speak to him?
Not speaking, not verbal. There was some email communication or text communication.
I wish we could just get rid of Lally and then have Jackson and Unetti do cross and direct for everybody.
With him? Was
Yes.
it on the 17th or the
Get
18th?
rid of him.
Yes, both, I think.
Oh, okay. And when did you render this opinion as far as what you testified to here today?
Shortly after he sent me the files.
This opinion, I'm Lally.
Now, in regards to those files, you testified in this court a couple days ago, correct?
I did.
And you were under oath at that point, is that correct?
Excuse me?
You were under oath at that point, is that correct?
Yes.
And when you were asked specifically what materials that you had reviewed, you included a number of items, but you did not include anything about a Dr. Sheridan affidavit, anything about a UC Davis report, or anything about any sort of bite history for a canine that lived or resided at 34 Fairview Road, correct?
That's correct because I hadn't reviewed them then.
And so since then, 2 days ago, now you've reviewed them, correct?
Yes, I became aware that those files existed. Yes.
Yes.
You became aware of those files? Were they not sent to you previously?
No, I think there were technical difficulties regarding me and the computer and downloading from Dropbox. And so, yeah, so they were, I think they were sent to me, but I think I didn't open them.
Now, with
Okay,
reference,
so that was what I thought. That's my prediction on that was right. So she's read them since then because now she knows that they exist.
to
Okay.
these technical difficulties, did you ever express any of those technical difficulties?
I
Or,
feel
"Hey,
you.
I can't see the whole file, or there's other things in here that are listed that I can't look at.
No, I wasn't aware.
And so with regard to, as far as your reaching out or contact in regard to this case, how did that come about?
I saw an article, I believe it was in the Boston Globe regarding this case. And I didn't, initially I didn't think anything of it. Then I saw an article that indicated that there was some,
I'm not asking you anything about anything, any article in here. You saw an article in the Boston Globe
Yes.
about this case, is that right?
yes,
And how did you come upon it? Do you have a subscription to the Boston Globe?
I did at the time. Yes.
You did at the time. What time was this?
In May.
May of 2024?
Yes.
And how long had you had a subscription to the Boston Globe at the time that you saw this?
It was either a 6-month subscription or a year. I don't remember.
And that was the first time that you had seen anything about that?
First time I paid attention to anything like that. Yes.
Now, again, you had testified here just a couple of days ago, and I asked you questions about this. Is that right?
Yes.
It wasn't in your testimony just a couple of days ago that the subscription was actually for a year or 18 months. You
No.
remember, not 6
It
months.
wasn't. No, it was not. She did not.
So
No.
only one person can
She did
talk
not
at a
say
time. So
you.
was that your testimony,
No,
doctor?
It was
No, I
not.
don't believe so.
It
I
was
believe
not.
that I said it was a 6-month subscription or a 12-month subscription.
Yes. Correct. Wow. Lolly?
In any event,
Motherfucker?
you saw something.
I
that-
swear to
that was
God.
the first time that you
Oh my
recalled seeing
God.
anything
Hold
in the media
on.
about this case was in May.
Yeah,
of
no,
2000.
I remember that very well.
It was the first time that
I
I
was covering.
recall reading anything about it. Correct.
Now, did you write a report in regard to your opinions that you testified here today?
No.
And I asked you that a couple days ago as well.
Yes.
Okay, so in the
Sure.
last couple of days, you've had time to review a UC Davis report, Dr. Sheridan's affidavit, and any sort of dog bite history, but you haven't had a chance to write a report.
Objection.
Fucking
Sustained to that point.
Lolly, I'm
You haven't
gonna
written a report, correct?
go to Canton
That's correct.
and get him, y'all.
I haven't been asked to write a report, sir.
She does not have to write a report.
Did you ever
Not
look at anything
required.
related to Mr. O'Keefe's head injury?
I looked at,
Objection.
Sustained.
Yeah, isn't she not supposed? Oh my God, I'm gonna strangle him. Why the fuck? I mean, technically, wasn't that opening the door though to getting into all that? Is that what's going to happen? Is he going to pull a poot and do it to himself? Because like I literally thought about that. I thought about that after this happened. I was like, you know what? What if Lally opens the door on himself and does it to himself? Shout out to Radiohead. Wouldn't that be amazing? Like that's what that sounds like to me. He just asked about the freaking head injury, man. I swear. Door, 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 door. Y'all, I hope that's a door. I want doors, like in Murdoch. Are there good songs about doors we can start singing in preparation? How much you want to bet, y'all? How much you want to bet though that Lally's going to do it? Like now that I think about it, I'm like, of course he's going to open the door. Of course he is. It's Lally. How could he not? Of course he's going to open the door. Oh my God, you guys, I can't wait. Question is, how many times is he going to open the door on himself? And can we lock him out afterwards? Knock, knock, knocking on Lally's door, maybe? Wow. Okay. This was a longer approach than I thought. I wonder if they are talking about this was, I thought they were already finishing up. Thought I heard the, okay, here we go.
May I have a moment, John?
Yes.
Again? Perfect.
Now, Doctor, you testified that you had some familiarity with areas of forensic science. You're on some boards, things of that nature. Is that correct?
Oh my God. Wally.
Yes.
He's going to do it. He's going to do it.
As a
He's
result of
gonna
that, or
do it. Do it.
work experience, you
Do
familiar
it.
with a NAS report from 2008?
Do it.
Not
Yeah.
with that limited information. no.
I know, right? That's the thing. Is that Alan objected? That's the tricky thing, right? Because fuck, now Lally might realize, had he not objected, I think that would have been it. But it might still happen. We'll see. That might, yeah. Fuck.
You're not aware of a
I know,
report
Lally
from the
or Alan
Association
from the
of Forensic Science in 2008,
Yeah.
Which specifically has a section dealing with
So I'm going to see you both at sidebar again.
Oh my God. Wow. All right, let's go forward again. Onward into the horizon.
that, I believe-
something, into the something, into the, I don't know what. Insanity.
You are unmuted.
So, ma'am, you're not familiar with that report specifically as it applies to forensic odontology?
So could you say that again, Mr. Lally? What's the report?
The National Academy of Sciences 2008 report in relation to the section referring to forensic odontology.
I'm not familiar with that specific report, no.
Are you familiar with it, Lally? Because
We're
probably
unfamiliar with the representation that is not from the NAS report, that is not a reliable science as far as bite marks are concerned.
There are certain aspects of bite marks that have been deemed not reliable. And that I believe has to do with saying that this particular person or animal inflicted this particular bite. But that's very specific, and that's what I'm aware of, that recommendation.
You're not aware of any findings in the NAS report that has led to questioning the value and scientific objectivity of such evidence?
For specifically identifying a bite mark to an individual that might have inflicted the bite mark, I think that's what that applies to.
Okay, I'm not asking, again, this is a report. Are you familiar with it or are you not familiar?
I'm familiar with a summary or a abstract of a report that indicates that forensic odontology is not is deemed not reliable when it comes to that particular narrow aspect of forensic odontology.
So you're not familiar with it. Also talking about sample data and collection, analyses of these, interpretation and reporting of results. You're not familiar with those areas of the NS report as well?
But what specifically, do you have a specific
So here's the thing.
question about that? Or
Here's
Question
what's,
was whether or not you're familiar with the report you indicated.
here's what's happening here. She doesn't know it by name, which is fair. That's why she's trying to ask about, that's why she's saying what it's about. I think it's because she's like, that's the thing that I'm thinking of. Are we thinking about the same thing? Right? Because he's not helping her out.
I did not read the report.
From the report.
Mr. Lally.
Sorry.
Oh,
Let the witness
sorry.
answer.
You're
One
right.
question at
Here.
a time, one speaker at a time.
Let me fix that. Sorry.
Roger, can you answer that question?
It's happening so
I did not read
fast,
that
you
report.
guys. It's happening so fast. I'm not
Now,
used to
you
this.
had, written some
We're used to
articles,
witnesses being on the
paragraphs
stand
about,
on direct for
reference
like
to,
a
dog
year.
bites, canine dog bites in the emergency department.
Jeez,
Is that correct?
you're right.
Yes, co-authored.
Something that you published or authored or co-authored sometime in the late 1990s. Is that right?
Correct.
And in that instance, you talk about law enforcement dogs and a bite and a hold technique, correct?
Yes.
Now, part of the reason in writing that article had to do with sort of the applied forces and the unique spectrum of injuries from those kind of dog bites. Is that correct?
Yes,
And that spectrum of injuries would include deep puncture wounds. Is that right?
they can. Yes.
Severe crush injuries. Is that right?
Correct.
Large tissue avulsions and lacerations. Is that right?
Yes.
Wounds necessitating surgical debridement. Is that right?
Yes.
Bony injuries ranging from cortical violations to displaced fractures. Is that right?
Yes.
Neurovascular damage. Is that right?
Yes.
And other wounds at high risk for infection, correct?
Correct. But we also put a disclaimer in that article.
I'm not asking you about any disclaimer.
Okay.
I'm asking you about that's what the type of injuries that you were looking at. Is that correct?
Yes, but we saw a skewed population.
You skewed population in a study. Is that correct?
What we saw the worst of the worst.
Or no? Did
Yes.
You skewed population in the study.
I'm sorry, I don't understand
Did
the
you
question.
skew the population.
We skewed the, did we skew? No, we reported on all the ones that presented to the emergency room for care. However, a lot of dog bites don't present to the emergency room.
And so from the different cases that you report on within that article, are there any of those cases in which there is injuries to just one aspect of one part of the human body for the victims of dog attacks or dog bites in those cases?
There may have been. That's a summary of the 700 cases, more than 700 cases.
Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Is it normal in any kind of animal attack for injuries to occur?
For any
on just
kind of
one
animal
side
attack,
one
what
arm
is wrong
of
with
the
you?
person that's being attacked, clawed, or bitten?
There are many people who are bitten
Any
or
kind of
scratched.
animal attack?
Only-
Tiger?
Okay, so hold on, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Lally, ask a question, wait for the answer, and then start a next question. Do not interrupt the
Right.
witness.
I apologize. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm asking for an answer responsive to the question.
No.
So ask a question
Not
and ask it in a
being
manner that you
Lally.
get a responsive answer.
Show
Dr.
some
Russell, in your
respect.
testimony that it's normal in an animal attack for injuries to occur on just one side of one arm and nothing else, anywhere else on that person's body.
It can be, yes.
I'm not asking if it can be. I'm asking, is that normal?
I can't say.
Sustained, you have to ask the question differently.
So from your observations, you looked at various photographs of Mr. O'Keefe, is that right?
I did.
Did you observe any injuries on any other part of his body that you would attribute to an animal attack, whether they be claw marks or bite marks or anything else?
No,
So nothing on his left arm, correct?
nothing that identified as a dog bite or
Nothing on
scratch.
his legs, is that correct?
That's correct.
Nothing on his torso, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, you say an animal attack, possibly a large dog, correct?
Yes.
Can you say what type of animal left these marks that you attribute to an animal attack?
Not with 100% certainty, no.
Can you say where physically Mr. O'Keefe was located when those the animal attack supposedly occurred?
Objection.
Can you say that?
No.
Can you say when Mr. O'Keefe purportedly sustained these injuries from an animal attack?
Well, to a certain degree, yes. Before, yeah, it was before
Well,
death,
he's an idiot.
but
Here's why.
not long
Well-
enough to have a big inflammatory reaction.
Obviously, we all know he's an idiot and we'll be here for a million years. But here's what I mean with the specific question. He paraded one witness after another to come in, and especially in the very beginning, talk about going to the waterfall. Do you guys remember that back in the day? And what did he ask every single person besides the high top? And what did they order to drink? And all that bullshit. Then he said, what was John O'Keefe wearing? And did he have any injuries or whatever that you could see? And what did every single person say? No injuries, no injuries. So he has already, she doesn't know this, right? She doesn't realize that she does not have to establish anything about the timing of those injuries because Lally did it to himself. Again, shout out to Radiohead.
Action. So yes.
Yep. Shout out to the water.
So minutes to hours before death.
Minutes to hours before death, but at some point before death, correct?
Yes.
Can you say anything about the breed of dog?
No.
Can you say anything about whether it occurred inside the house, outside the house, anything like that?
No.
As far as you mentioned some of the different things that you reviewed over the course of your testimony, over the preparation of your testimony, both prior to Tuesday and between Tuesday and today, any of those things contain any forensic reports or phone examinations or anything else related to this case?
Phone examinations.
Could you repeat that? I didn't. What kind of examination?
Any
Phone?
of the materials that you reviewed.
Yeah, I was
prior
also.
sometime between May 17th and Tuesday,
Why-
or anything that you reviewed between Tuesday and today. Did any of those materials that you reviewed contain any sort of forensic reports or anything beyond the UC days?
Yes, I saw a photograph.
You saw photographs, and to that point, you never actually saw Mr. O'Keefe's body, correct? You just saw photographs.
That's true.
And with respect to the UC Davis report, as far as canine DNA, are you aware that the results of that were that there was no canine DNA on Mr. O'Keefe, on swabbings that were sent to the
Oh,
UC Davis?
really?
I'm going to allow it.
Huh.
Yes, but there was clothing in between.
Okay, but the swabbings came from the clothing with tears in the clothing in the same area as the injuries, correct?
Okay.
Do you know that or no?
I couldn't tell if they came from the wound or the clothing. I thought that they came from the clothing, but
You couldn't tell by reviewing the report whether or not the swabbings came from clothing or from Mr. O'Keefe's body.
I know the clothing was sent to the laboratory,
You know the clothing was sent to what laboratory?
to the DNA laboratory.
To UC Davis?
Oh, I don't know that. No, I'm sorry.
You are aware that that came back as far as negative for any canine DNA, correct?
That's correct.
Now, as far as the injuries that you observed, your testimony is that both the top teeth of whatever animal this is and the bottom teeth of whatever animal this
It's
is.
a tiger,
contact
guys.
With
Spoiler
only
alert.
the top of Mr. O'Keefe's arm or the posterior of his arm.
Both sets of teeth made contact with certain of those wounds, yes, but not all of them.
But neither the top nor the bottom teeth made any contact that you observed, assuming your issue as far as an animal attack. There's no evidence of any animal attack on the bottom of Mr. O'Keefe's right arm, correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by bottom.
Interior,
Interior? That's correct.
and nothing on the posterior or the anterior of his left arm,
That is correct.
and nothing on his legs,
That's correct.
nothing on his torso,
Correct.
nothing on his head. Is that correct?
Correct.
Some tiger that
As far
is.
as the marks that you did observe that you do attribute to an animal attack, can you even say with certainty whether or not those marks you feel are bite marks versus scratch marks? Do you have any idea which are which?
There may be a combination.
So is that no?
Well, no, I think that the ones that had the linear abrasions above the small round punctate abrasions, I believe that those are bite marks from upper and lower teeth.
Now, you indicated that part of what you had reviewed was a dog bite history for a dog from 34 Fairview Road named Chloe. Is that right?
Yes.
And there were a couple different instances of that dog essentially getting in a fight with other dogs, correct?
Yes.
And at any point in time, did you see anything in there as far as a dog going after a human in which there was no other dog present?
Oh, that's
No.
why he wanted her.
And there were actually photographs contained within that material of dog bites from that dog, from Chloe, correct?
Yes.
Did any of those dog bites that you saw in those photographs look anything like what you observed in the photos that you saw of Mr. O'Keefe's arm?
No,
I
but
can't believe this is.
Okay.
That's all, ma'am.
Objection, Your Honor.
No, so the answer is no. You can get back up, Mr. Jackson, but the answer to that
Oh my
question is
God.
no. Next
You,
question.
Judge Bev? Rude.
So is it your testimony that from reviewing what you reviewed, that what you observe on Mr. O'Keefe's arm is consistent with an animal attack to the exclusion of any other possibilities?
to a degree of reasonable medical certainty, yes.
Oh, well
As
done.
far as any other sort of blunt impact injuries or other manifestations of how those scratches got there, you're saying, nope, had to be an animal attack.
Lally, you're saying a blunt force
I've seen
injury caused
thousands
that?
of
You're joking.
wounded.
No, ma'am. What I'm asking is.
All right.
somewhat-
So, Mr. Lally, I'm going to let the witness answer.
Thank God.
I've seen thousands of people with injuries to their skin, and from blunt, from sharp,
Right.
from all
Yes,
different
ma'am,
mechanisms.
you have. Do
Those
it.
injuries did not look like blunt force injuries.
Nope.
So it's your testimony that the injuries to his arm don't.
Yeah, I know,
look
right?
like
Lolly's
blunt
a
force
big
injuries
drawer.
that you've seen before.
Girl,
You
up
wouldn't
your hair.
characterize them as that?
That's correct.
Great point, DSN. Yes. Yes.
And that's based on some
Well, great
photographs and
point.
some other
Eagle.
materials that you began reviewing sometime
Yes.
May 17th, 2024.
Yes, I'm an ER doctor. I need to make a diagnosis quickly when I see something, and I'm trained to do that. That's my specialty.
Are you being
Yes,
asked
ma'am.
as an ER doctor
Do
to
it.
come to a quick conclusion in this case?
No,
But you did anyway.
it's how I'm trained.
Nothing further.
Very briefly, Your Honor. Please report.
Go ahead.
Concerning the forensic odontology report, the NAS report that Mr. Lally asked you about, what is your understanding about the report as it pertains to identifying individuals who left a bite mark? Explain that for me, please.
I believe the report says that that is not reliable as it once was thought to be.
Like a fingerprint identifying a human being,
Right.
DNA identifying a person, or a bite mark identifying a person. NAS said, not the bite mark, doesn't work that way.
That's correct.
Has nothing
I'm
to
glad-
do with the pattern.
I'm
of
glad
injuries
this is
we've seen
coming
for
up
thousands.
because I've seen a lot of people ask questions like on the different law tubers of like, why can't they find Chloe and like test her claws? And I'm like, this is why. This is why. Because I'm like, yeah, come on, people.
Time
Like,
commandments,
obviously.
correct?
Correct.
You were asked several
Let me
questions
fix
about
the banner.
the injuries that you saw and studied attended to highly trained canines, police dogs, correct?
Yes.
Very different than just a domestic dog that somebody might have as a pet, correct?
Right.
Correct.
And the bite injuries are very, very different as well, aren't they?
That is correct.
Yes, indeed.
You were asked whether or not you were aware, based on UC Davis's report, that there was no canine DNA found on the swabs that were sent to them, correct?
Yes,
Are you also aware that there was pig DNA?
I'm aware of that.
Did that have any impact did you analyze that at all, one way or the other?
Not to any degree of scientific certainty, no.
But you do know that dogs chew on pig ears sometimes, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
I wish they would chew
You
on Lolly's
reviewed,
ears
a
and
report,
face.
not a series of reports that indicate that a particular dog has an attack history, correct?
Yes,
You were asked specifically by Mr. Lally whether or not
Or-
the wounds in a dog attack on another dog attack where a human stuck a hand in the middle look anything like these, correct? Remember that question?
I remember a question like
And
that.
you said no, but, and then you were cut off. Remember that?
Yes,
Can you finish that answer for us?
yes.
Yes.
So animals and dogs in particular can inflict a wide variety of injuries on the skin,
Yes.
from just individual puncture wounds to abrasions where there's a scratching of the skin to where there's actually a pulling away pulling away of the skin from the underlying tissues,
Yes.
a ripping effect. And so there's a variety of wounds that or patterns that one can see from an animal attack. It depends a lot on the thickness of the skin, the movement of between the victim and the animal, and also the power of the animal and the training of the animal. Yes.
So in other words, not all wounds inflicted by a particular animal are going to look exactly the same.
Correct.
Very dynamic situation, isn't it?
Objection.
Sustained.
Doctor.
Does not remind you all of Murdoch? How many times they said that?
1,000 bite and claw marks
A
on
very
the
dynamic
the
situation.
human body. And based on your review of the entirety of the case file that you reviewed, including the nature and the pattern and consistency of the injuries that you saw on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm, what is your opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty about the nature of those injuries?
Objection.
Sustained.
What
You mean the
reasonable
weasel
reason, in your
alert?
opinion, about the
Do you mean the weasel alert, random girl? We've been using the weasel alert, but usually it was with the problem is that you had so many weasels going on during the case in chief for the Commonwealth, where you had weasels on the stand and Lally. So I think usually we were using this in, for like Brian Higgins and Proctor, and yeah, I'm pretty sure if that's what you were asking.
Objection.
Sustained.
There you go. There's an idea right there.
Can you tell the jurors at the end of the day, what is your opinion and conclusion about those injuries?
Objection.
Sustained.
John, can we approach?
What has Andrea been saying for days? That they're going to open the door? Wally's going to open the door? All right. They're approaching. Or are they going to break for lunch? Let's see. Oh, that he already opened the door. Okay. With what specifically?
All right, jurors, we will take our luncheon break.
Okay. So, let me just make sure I didn't miss the last question. I don't think I did. It looks like that's what's happening in the courtroom.
Thank you, Your Honor. No more questions.
You are
And-
unmuted.
No more
Mr.
questions.
Lally, you had no more questions?
No, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, doctor, you are all set.
Holy shit. So they're done with her. Holy shit. God, this is fast. Are they going to finish their case in chief today? They might. What? Honestly, if they do, that would be kind of cool because Monday I'm available and that would be closing our, well, jury instructions and closing, unless they have to do some more days without the jury to work on that. But wow, okay. So, wow. All right. Let's see where they are live because sometimes those lunches are so short. Okay. They're still at lunch. Wow. So, but they only had, from what I understand, 4 or 5 witnesses, right? If it's 4, they've already called 2. We know who the next 2 are. So maybe the 4 or 5 is if Karen takes a stand. So imagine this, guys. Here's what we know. We know we've already heard from the tow truck guy, or sorry, snowplow. I keep getting them confused. We already heard from Marie Russell. So we've got the 2 guys from the federal case, right? The ARCA guys. You think that will take a long time? Okay. And then I think the or 5th is my guess on that is that that's in case Karen, because they do that whole colloquy thing last minute. So who's their digital expert? I just don't know that name because I guess they weren't mentioned in the motion. Oh, right, there's a Brian Green, right? Okay, that's the tech guy, Brian Green. Right. Okay. Okay. So then that might, well, maybe they'll get him and get through the first ARCA guy, the real handsome one. He's so handsome. Y'all, I've got a funny video for you guys that's real short. Hold on, let's just watch this real quick. Let me take down my banner. Where is it? Okay, here it is. This is so funny. This is from Lawyer, like last night, maybe?
Even that, right? Even that. So at 12:24, he immediately gets out. She immediately hits him and immediately leaves. Is that the state's theory? Because they didn't say that she hit him at 12:24 or 12:25 or 12:30, but 12:45. So even their own evidence doesn't go in their timeline. It's very, very interesting.
It's very, very, I love that. It's very, very interesting. I think it's fucking hilarious. But y'all are awesome. I'll roll the outro just in case because I don't know yet. I don't know what's going to be coming up next. So I'll roll the outro just in case. But I might be seeing y'all soon, in which case it'll just be a double outro day. So, but also there is a recap tomorrow night. So even if regardless of what happens today, there is a recap tomorrow night, and I might be able to even fit one in on Sunday as well. We might be able to do back-to-back recaps and maybe finish out week 7 for the recaps this weekend. So that's the plan. I know, actually, briefly, I know we did talk about maybe catching up on the yesterday's testimony and doing watching that together this weekend. I feel though, I think everybody's already watched it. So let me know if you still want to do a live trial day, makeup day for yesterday's testimony and do that this weekend instead of a recap one of the days. Just let me know. But other than that, I will see y'all soon today, or if not today, then tomorrow. And I'll roll that outro.